on October 15th, 2020. This is Gary Lamel. I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the South Carolina Commission on Disabilities and Special Needs. And I would recognize Commissioner Blackwood for the notice of meeting statement.
Meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place for the October 15th, 2020 Commission meeting was distributed October 13th, 2020 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, and other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Thank you. Welcome. We're not going to have introductions because there's no guests. It's just staff and commission members today in the room. So the next item would be the adoption of the agenda. Does anybody have any corrections or changes to the proposed agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the agenda as written.
Thank you, Commissioner Rollinson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Malfros. All in favor of adopting the agenda as proposed, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is adopted. And the next item on that agenda, I will recognize Commissioner Thomas for the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I do the invocation concerning the agenda, I want to make sure, is the agenda online so everybody can see, so the public can see what we're going to be discussing?
Yes, it is my understanding that on the website, on the meeting notice tab, the agenda is there.
And I'm sorry, I'm having trouble keeping this thing on. Are we on video online also, or just audio?
Just audio.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure. So with that, may I please?
Yes, sir.
Have the invocation. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that we have the opportunity to be here as commissioners and staff. And we thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to serve folks that are in need of some help. And we pray for their families. We pray for them. We thank you, Father, for giving us wonderful providers that serve the public so faithfully and diligently. We ask that you give us guidance and very good wisdom and insight as we study these problems. Thank you that staff can be here to present and give information and show us the direction they think we should be headed in these day-to-day and policy decisions that we make. We pray this in your wonderful name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Next, moving on to tab 2 of the commission materials we were provided. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the September 17th, 2020 commission meeting minutes. Does anybody have any changes, corrections, or modifications of the minutes as proposed? Hearing none, would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Rollinson. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is the commissioner updates. Going around there, Commissioner Malford is going to start and go around. Any updates from you, sir? Going around the room? Anyone? I do have one. So the Max Abilities, what used to be York County Disabilities and Special Needs Board, celebrated their Ruby anniversary. The staff there really did a tremendous job. They put together, in keeping with the COVID protocols, a presentation at their offices that really traced the entire history of the organization from its foundings several decades back. I was particularly proud to be there because my aunt was one of the founding members of that. There was the daughter of one of the other founding members, Mr. Marshall Doswell, who I actually had the pleasure of serving with for a couple of years up there in York. Was really a fantastic event. It's a shame that it happened in COVID because I think it could have been much, much bigger, but given the restraints that they operated under, I thought that they did a fantastic job. They did produce a video that I'd like to play for everybody. Unfortunately, it won't be able to be broadcast to the rest of the state, but I would encourage anyone who wants to see it to contact Michelle at Max Abilities. I'm sure she'll be happy to share it. And I'd like to share it with you. If you pay close attention, you may see some familiar faces on there.
I wouldn't change you for the world, but I would change the world for you. The journey of Max Abilities of York County formally began in 1980 when the York County Board initiated its first program, Horizon Industries, previously known as New Horizons. This grassroots effort was quite the undertaking, and as you can imagine, the organization had birthing pains as they diligently worked to figure out what this program would look like and how they could grow and make an impact. Long to realize there was a need for a permanent residence that would allow qualified individuals the opportunity to live a full and productive life. In 1982, the doors to Raven Circle, our first residence home for 6 ladies, opened and residential services were initiated. It was quickly followed by the opening of Lucas Street the following year. In 1983, a group of Rock Hill parents and advocates initiated work on obtaining HUD funding to more quickly expand residential availability in the community. Third, spearheaded Eddie and Mary Ann Aberman and Marshall Dyswell provided a successful boost for residential growth in York County. In 1986, early intervention services were initiated, another first that offered help for parents and caregivers with special children who were not sure what the next step could be. Service is still going strong with over 60 children receiving service. In 1989, Daisy's Bakery was a trend-setting move and became the first of many establishments started by York County Board of Disabilities with the goal of providing job training. In 1993, the state mission changed autism, traumatic brain and spinal cord injuries to our service list. And since 1994, residential expansion has continued, with the agency now operating 28 residential programs throughout York County, all with a heart to serve this community and the very special families living here. In the year 2000, the York County Board of Disabilities and Special Needs recognized the need for a true fundraising entity to assist in the acquisition of funds to meet the residential growth needs of the board's service list. As a result, the York County Disabilities Foundation was created as the 501c3 organization to assist the York County Board of Disabilities and Special Needs in those efforts, and has undertaken several successful fundraisers over the years, such as Savor the Flavors, 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, and the ongoing development of Rock Hill Miracle Park. In 2015, the York County Board of Disabilities and Special Needs applied to change the agency name to Max Abilities of York County. And in 2018, York Coffee Roastery was established to provide an employment bridge from school services to adults who have no waiver funding. When Max Abilities began 40 years ago, we initially served 200 individuals with one program and one hour service, all while operating with a minimal budget. Now, in 2020, as we celebrate our 40th anniversary, Max Abilities is able to serve approximately 1,400 people with over 30 programs, 5 outreach services, and operates with an annual budget of $16 million.
Let me read a letter that we composed here at our congressional office, recognizing people that have contributed so much to the organization. I know most of them. I had dealings with them. Many of them, I think all but 2 are deceased. But they're great individuals. They serve because they want to help people. I'd like to personally thank you for your contributions to Max Abilities of York County. That this agency could not have been a success without all the volunteers who have donated their time. In 1980, a group of family members had a dream to help initiate community services for their family members as well as others in York County. This group of interesting citizens started work on the first grant to develop community residential services. Special thanks to Marshall Doswell, Eddie and Mary Ann Aberman, Dr. George Haydad, Dr. Aldrin Brown, Dr. Sam Lowe, Bob Hayes Sr., and Ted Simon. Their tireless efforts have created a program that today serves over 100 people and offers 30 different programs to individuals with special needs throughout York County. All of your time, your effort, your hard work, please accept my sincere thanks and appreciation. You have truly been a blessing to this agency and to this county, and I would add to the country, because what you're doing for people who, in many cases, are left out in this country, that should not be. And I just want to thank you, and this is a small token of our appreciation, and my words, keep up the good work, let us know how we can help you, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
It is with the biggest of hearts and thanks we look back and are in awe of how far we've come. None of it would have been possible without each of you, regardless of the size of the role you have played, and we want to say, here's to the next 40 years.
Happy anniversary!
And I just want to say thank you to Congressman Norman for his very kind words and then what he put together for in recognition of the original founding members of York County Disabilities and Special Needs / Max Abilities. Any further commissioner update? All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda, public input. I am informed that no one has applied to provide public input today. Again, would remind everyone out there in the public that a system is in place and encourage you to make use of that. We are always interested in hearing from you. So we'll move on now to commission committee business. The first up is the Finance and Audit Committee. Would recognize Chairman Blackwood, and we are on tab 3 of our material at this time.
Thank you. So we were provided with a summarized chart, which is on page tab 3 for provider contracts. The commissioners indicated we wanted to quarterly see all the contracts broken out by provider and program per quarter, and so we reviewed that chart in the committee meeting, and that is what you will see on tab 3. So that's just being shared with the full commission, so you can see what Chris provided to us and shared with us. On this chart under mentor, actually mentor isn't on this chart, are they?
Yes.
Yeah, they are. Okay, SC mentor. They have an contract request for 240, it's listed here as 224, but on the next tab, the actual amount is 226,195, which is something we did vote on in committee, and we just need a second today for that expense for Mentor, who, as you know, is now taking consumers, DDSN consumers, and their request is based on, providing the beds that are needed, both in the high management homes and the H1, I'm trying to think they're two categories of homes. And so, anyway, so we approved that and just need a second for Mentor. Unless anyone has any questions about the chart and the breakout of this newer information that we're going to be receiving quarterly regarding the contracts and providers.
I can make a couple comments.
Sure, go ahead.
Amounts on here that are over $200,000, you have to approve individually. And again, this is aggregated data for an entire quarter. So theoretically, you could have a number over 200 that you've never approved the amendment for. But in this case, you will see Babcock Center, Thrive, and York all have amounts in excess of $200,000. You approved those 3 amendments on August 20th in that meeting, and if you want to review that, you can see that in the minutes. So the only remaining item that's over 200 on here is for Mentor, and that is a separate motion that you all need to take up for that.
Thanks.
Do we want to, do that and then go on to the audit, charter stuff?
Yes, that sounds good.
Item 4, I believe.
Good.
Okay.
So did the committee make a motion to approve, I guess, first in general, just the report here?
The summary.
The summary,
It's just
okay.
informational because we said as a commission, we wanted to see it quarterly broken out in a new way. And so we wanted to bring that today to the full commission to see that.
Okay.
So,
The only motion is with regards to approving
Yeah.
that, and it's the aggregate modification is 226,195, is that correct?
That is under tab 4 as a separate item.
Okay.
The other thing I would like to note, there's a lot of netting and moving of money here. If you look at the total composite of 909,000 in amendments, 509,000 of that is for Band Bs and 391,000 of that is for Band Is. That's 900,000 of the 909,000. So we have a lot of movement in our at-home waiver bands, slots, which you're receiving a report on that later today, I think, from Kevin maybe. But anyways, I think that's worth noting because the residential money is like, it sloshes around in the system. Folks moving around, coming, going, people moving from one provider to another. So you might want to just kind of note that in your head as you look at these numbers.
Chairman, could I ask him a quick question, Chairman? This is Dave.
Yes, sir.
Could you, we roll around the term Band B and Band I a lot, and I think I memorized at one time what was the difference and exactly what it was. Could you just remind me what is Band B, what is Band I, and what's the difference, and what do the bands do?
All right, so Band B is tied to the IDRD waiver. We have 3 waivers we operate: head and spinal cord injured, intellectual disabilities and related disabilities, and community supports waiver. The Band B funding is for at-home IDRD consumers. So they're non-residential. They might go to the day program or they might receive other supports, but they reside at home in their
So
home.
B is at home.
Correct.
B is at home. Okay.
I is as well, but it's the CS waiver program,
Community services waiver?
community supports.
Okay.
Yep, correct. And so it's entirely, they're always at home. That doesn't have a residential component at all to it. So Band I's are always at home. The IDRD does have a residential component, and they could be in a variety of.
And RD means what?
Intellectual disabilities.
Okay.
And related disabilities.
Okay.
RD is intellectual and related disabilities.
Intellectual disabilities and related disabilities, right?
IDRD.
IDRD.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Does that clarify that for you?
That was helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're looking for a motion. Okay, so if I guess technically I don't want to get ahead of myself. Get to the amendments, which is number 2 under there, tab 4. Are we looking for a motion?
Chairman, the motion we're about to make approves the chart.
We could do a motion or not. That's sort of the question I have is, do we want to do a motion to accept the charge? We don't have to.
Well, I move we accept the chart.
Okay. That's a motion to accept the chart as presented. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Then let the record reflect that we have accepted and approved that presentation. Thank you, Chris. So moving on to the next item then, Commissioner Blackwood, would be the contract amendments over 200,000 that we're looking to approve for this meeting.
Which is for Mentor, which is on page
Tab 4.
Yeah, tab 4. And the amount of $226,195. We approved that in our committee, and so we really today just need a second on that amount.
And so the committee approved it, which means coming out of committee, we treat that as a motion and a second already done. So that motion is before us.
In a second, okay.
Thank you.
The reason, Chairman, the reason Mentor is broken out is because it exceeds the 200,000, so that's why it's not on the preceding chart and covered by the preceding motion.
It is on there.
Yes.
It's aggregated in there. If you look down under SC Mentor, that number says 226.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah.
got it under SC.
So what we do is we report all amendments quarterly, and then each one over 200 every month.
Yep.
Yeah, we have to break it out.
Well,
Okay.
And as Chris said, we approved 2 other ones on this chart earlier in the quarter.
So with this next motion on tab 4, we're merely going back to SC Mentor on the preceding chart and giving it a super endorsement.
Yeah,
Right,
just
and it's
seeing it as a
broken out
reference.
separately.
Yeah, just
Four
seeing it
also.
as a reference.
And you've already got a motion in the
Correct, because it came out of
came out
committee.
of committee.
Yeah, yeah.
Does anybody have any questions about the amendment with regard to mentor? Okay. All in favor of the amendment, as indicated, please, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then that amendment is approved. All right, next item on the agenda is the, Internal Audit Committee Charter, and recognize Commissioner Fleetwood.
Okay. So,
And that is, we're on tab 5.
yes, tab 5. In tab 5, you'll see a copy of the SCDDSN Finance Audit Committee Charter. This document had been updated by Kevin, Director of Internal Audit, and discussed in our committee. We pretty much discussed a few changes to it, which since that meeting, Kevin has made. And I don't know if anyone has any questions about this charter right now, but we will need a motion to approve this charter. Right, Kevin? Just want to make sure I got that right. Anyone has any questions on it?
Well, can we hear, are there any comments from staff on the charter, change in charter?
No, sir. Again, Audit Finance Committee met on Monday, had some minor edits, those have been made. Staff is happy with it. We just need your blessing.
Chairman, may I ask another question?
Absolutely, sir.
Let me make sure I understand what the charter does, so this just changes, what you're after is a charter that establishes you in sort of certification or something like that nationwide, and this gives the imprimatur of them and the authenticity of what you do. Is that a way to say it?
We're getting to that document, that's next. This document is actually the charter for the Finance Audit Committee and spells out their responsibilities.
Over the audit.
I got it, okay.
Internal
I
audit.
understand the distinction.
Yes.
So for that, it's sort of more from our perspective then that we, and all the way it falls on Robin, Commissioner Robin.
Right.
So something's wrong here, so far.
Yeah.
I was just checking, okay.
Thanks for the reminder.
You're welcome.
Yes, this one defines more what the subcommittee does, as opposed to the actual.
Got it, I got it.
Audit.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we spent a good bit of time, going through this, talking through this, looking, made some minor, I think primarily minor edits to it, but, so I think in a good place.
Call for vote, Chairman.
And I think that because there were some minor edits done, that ultimately the committee did not vote on this, we will need a motion in a second as a full commission.
I make a motion to be accepted as written.
I second.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner. All in favor of accepting it as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, hearing none, that is approved unanimously. Thank you.
I don't have any except to say that I'm Barry, and here, Barry Albert.
Thank you. Commissioner Malford made the motion and Commissioner Thomas made the second. All right, so next up on the agenda is the Internal Audit Charter Directive. And again, recognize, we are now on tab 6.
This document was voted and approved by the committee with revisions discussed, that we discussed, and it has to be posted externally for review for 10 business days. After the comment period, it will come back to the Finance and Audit Committee for review and possible edits, taking into consideration public comment, if any. Once the secondary review takes place, allowing for consideration of any public comments, the committee will then bring the documents to the full commission for final presentation and approval. So does anyone have any questions for Kevin on this document?
IA is an acronym that means internal auditor.
Yes, yes.
I was making a joke. We had so much discussion of acronyms.
Yeah, well, most of
That
them-
was pretty obvious.
Most of them are hard to figure out.
It's own language.
Okay.
So if I understand correctly, essentially where we're at right now is basically approving it for public comment,
Yeah,
to be put up for public.
yeah.
So,
It's not a final adaptation.
I just want to say one thing. Rob, you thought it was necessary to bring it back to the committee after, well, yeah, after public comment is over.
Yeah.
We should have put it on public comment.
Yeah, and this document has to go out for public comment because it's just a directive, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Which is new for us, because in the past, this is just from- I understand the age of transparency, we want to put everything out there for public comment. If anybody wants to comment, like say in the South, bless their heart. It's not a thing I want to consider. Taking up a hobby or something.
Well, that being said, we definitely want to give everybody.
Have the changes, Chairman, Mayor, have the changes here, was there any need to pass this to any, I know there's some legislative aspect to it, legislative members, for instance, I see on page 6, struck. Has there been anything that we needed to pass this by, anybody in the House or the Senate to, nobody's affected, right? No, there's not some House member that sits on some special thing or a senator that sits on some special thing, right?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay, so we're not gonna get recognition. All right.
Any other questions, comments? I'm gonna bring up mine. I brought it up in committee. You know, one of the big changes on this is the financial sanction amount going from a set of $500 to a minimum of $1,000.
I saw that, yeah.
I would just say, and I know we're not voting on it, but just, it's my Republican, but I'm opposed to that. I was wrong when we set that number of $500. There was a lot of consideration based on what we wanted that number to be, that it was not intended to be a punitive punishment number, that it was intended solely as essentially an attention getter if there was a situation where I found a problem related to health and welfare, they asked for it to be addressed and it wasn't addressed, that another alert was sent and then it wasn't addressed. It was basically supposed to be here's your quick notice that the next step is we're gonna have to bring a real hammer down on you. The fine itself was just essentially meant to be enough to alert somebody. I am concerned about how that is going to be received by the people down the road from us. I imagine we'll probably hear a lot about that. We're not voting to approve this, but I will just say as far as my comment, that is something that I am opposed to, and I don't think it sends the right message to our providers down the road.
We don't have, Chairman,
But the message is sent after they decide not to do what we asked them to do.
Correct.
So that's why we send the message. We're not sending a message before we ask them to do what we want them to do. We're doing it after they refuse to do it in a certain amount of time. So we would ask that it was approved right now like it is.
I understand, and I'm understanding that the finance committee liked it, and I didn't have a vote then. I'm just making my position known. It's going to be coming back from public comment. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to.
no, you, I didn't mean to cut you off. There's a philosophy that is sort of out there in some public arenas, that if the sanction is not significant enough, go ahead and do it, because if we get sanctions or if we get hit, it's not that big a hit. Well, that's defined, and I don't know how to deal with that except create something. If it's not going to be financial, do you have another idea of how it could be substantial? For instance, it could say, instead of that, it could say the matter shall be returned to the entire commission, and the commission shall have plenary authority to sanction financially, or whatever, by any amount we want. I mean, we've gone through a couple of things where we've had providers, and we all know how we've tried to kind of get them back into the game. And when the whole commission is involved in it, I mean, this is serious stuff. This was health and goodness.
Yeah.
Somebody not doing this, like Commissioner Malcolm says, I mean, I found them with you. I don't like the financial thing, but what leverage then would you recommend?
And it's not so much a leverage thing, and because what it really is, it's supposed to be a bridge that sort of came about as problems with Mentor Surface, that we had no way to alert people that they were not, and alert people in a way that is sort of the step before we put them on the freeze, because that was sort of the other big thing that we had, because of the way the system was built. Prior to us putting this in, there was nothing between sending angry letters and putting them on a freeze. That was it. So, yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. There may be this idea with some people that say that we're just going to accept the cost no matter what it is, and just do it. I don't think that within our community that's been an issue.
Well, within our purview,
Yeah.
I would think the commission would want to know by transparency if there's a health issue as stated in the preamble to the section.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about safety, welfare, and so these are awfully important. I'm agreeing with the chairman, and what I'm asking the chairman to do, and I'll support you probably, is in lieu of the monetary thing, I think it ought to come to the commission, because we've got a lot more power, I think, to do things than, if it's just sitting out there amongst and I don't mean this is a positive thing, not among the bureaucrats, so to speak. I think they need to get the commission involved, because we can, if we decide to become very specific in our kind of plenary power if necessary. And I'd like for you to work with Mary on this one, and maybe Mary can come up with some idea of a middle ground instead of a financial thing that's more powerful. You get somebody who's ignoring what is here, and I think the commission should know about it.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's something that I would be bringing to us if they found out that sort of health and welfare thing. But I also think that this was actually supposed to be triggered, that this was something that internal audit could assess, right? That was, it wasn't stuck in bureaucracy. It didn't have to wait a month for them to do it. In other words, they sent out the report, no response. They sent out the second notice, no response. Third response is, we're putting this on you, we're letting the commission know about it. But
Chairman, just to talk out loud just for a second, maybe what would be requested is that the internal auditor must report non-compliance with blah, blah, blah. So we're depending on the IA specifically to tell us what's going on. And then in session, if we have to go to executive session or whatever to deal with the contract issue, maybe you threaten to suspend the entire contract. I mean, I think by now, hopefully we're getting pretty good at dealing with miscreants that are doing what we ask them to do.
And again, I'm just sort of putting this out there as an initial thing. We're not actually voting on it today, because it's got to go out for public comment, but I'm essentially using my public comment that I understand where it's coming from. I understand 100% where it's coming from. I'm just letting you know, to set this up, there was an idea in mind that it was not intended to be a punitive fine. It was more of an alert system.
I want the commission, what I'm saying is, I want the commission to know about it. And I'm not.
Well, can I say something? All this document says right now is that it'll go, if we want to do a punitive fine between $1,000 or more, that it would be, and punitive is the only realistic fine you would have, I can imagine. And the reason we wanted to increase it was because the providers have so much in reserve. $500 is really nothing to what they have. I mean, their reserves are increasing and not decreasing as COVID goes on, which is infuriating, but anyway, to me. But anyway, with the amount of money that we're decreasing and they're increasing. But what I would say is, all the document currently says is that it would go from to the finance committee to decide that. Now, I think to solve David's problem, we could just bring it to the commission to decide instead of to the finance committee to decide. But that would come after the public comment. We have to put it out for public comment, and we have to come back to this. So if we can just put it out for public comment, and then we'll come back to it, and we'll say, if we decide to bring it to the commission instead of the finance committee, that would be a viable option.
Mr. Chairman,
Miss,
Yeah, I'm gonna recognize Commissioner Miller first and then come back.
we can just add, based on what Commissioner Thomas has stated, and or the commission, right after, audit committee, and or the commission.
And I think those are all things that maybe we could do after we get back. I think, again, maybe I'm causing trouble, and that never be said about me. That I'm just sort of I think we can put it out for public comment, and then when we come back to actually vote on if we want to amend it, we can do that. I think we can do that. Put it out in that form.
Chairman, I didn't
So,
have a-
yeah, I apologize.
I didn't have a vote in finance committee, but I did attend and was watching this. As a parent, you can't keep warning people, you're gonna get in trouble, you're gonna get in trouble. If you don't fix this, you're gonna get in trouble, because the more you do that, the more they know they're gonna be able to get away with it, and there's not gonna be an actual consequence. I think the reason we came to $1,000, or they came to $1,000, I just was there observing, is right now it's, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And we keep saying, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, but they keep doing it.
And in doing that is the health and well-being of the person.
I mean,
That's what mentor is frozen because someone died in their
Yeah.
care. And so that is.
I mean, those lives are worth at least $1,000. I mean, I hate to be
What am I thinking?
Or a lot more, I mean-
that's a minor fine. I mean, these are potential lawsuits that can come to us, and we have to pay for that. And that disturbs me a little bit, that, we're gonna have to pay when they don't do what they're supposed to do. And I believe $1,000 is the minimum we should ask.
Chairman, I don't mean to interrupt. Chairman, even if it doesn't, I just want, you've alerted me, and I feel so serious about the preamble and what it says and what Commissioner Stephanie is just saying, and Commissioner Robin also. I'm at some point going to make a motion, and I don't know when the appropriate time is. After a comment period, I make a motion, but it's going to be that also there must be, that would be the essence of the motion. Anything that involves this and gets this serious, the IA must inform the commission about blah. And I want to hear from the IA what's going on. If it's in danger of health and welfare and all this, and it's that significant enough to get a $1,000 fine, help, the death issue, and the commission doesn't know about it, we should know about it, and empower the director, our executive director, to take some kind of definite action, and the world ought to know that the commission's owned to what's happening.
Gary.
I don't remember in all the mentor conversations that I was involved in, because I was already in motion when I became a commissioner. I don't remember Kevin ever reporting on mentor. I remember it was just you reporting on mentor. So I'm just kind of thinking about, the new.
Yeah.
I think, can I say something?
Yes, absolutely.
I think we're getting just a little confused in the scope of what Kevin is doing. Many of his audits are starting, are in the personal finance area of the individual's funds. And a lot of the reports you see are about,
Which might change.
not about health and safety, but it's all about finance. We have other mechanisms that deal with the health and safety, and we have come to you with that. Like when we were talking about mentor, when we were talking about the last company we had to put on when we put Lutheran on an admission suspension, That truly is a big fine. When you can no longer admit people, that is probably the biggest fine y'all can give. Because we're not talking about $1,000, we're not talking about $10,000, we're talking about a lot of money.
Right.
So it really does get their attention when they can no longer fill vacancies, because that's the serious danger, and those are being brought to the commission. And that's part of the QA arm of investigating critical incidents and
QA,
quality assurance, quality improvement, risk management. It's basically, those things it's a risk management department. And in some companies, what Kevin does would be in the risk management department, because it's all about managing risk, health and safety, financial, it's all in that same sphere of risk. Now, health and safety, we manage it through the professionals who are able to utilize chart reviews, they understand plans, they're looking for, the activity, the programming for the person, the medical follow-up for the person. That's probably not, if Kevin saw that, he would bring in that team, say, you guys need to come in and look at that, if he had a suspicion. So this directive really doesn't go to that area. That area is where we start pulling in the contracts and saying, you're not providing residential habilitation, which is care, supervision, and training. So if any one of those three things are missing, you're not providing residential habilitation. And that's when we put them on, we start talking about admissions, we give them a plan of correction, and if it's not done, then we don't waste time. Yes?
Well, back to
So
the issue.
audit might be not the right thing.
To the issue of mentor, just for a second, a side thought that, let me, it will save me from coming back to it. With mentor, can you, as we go through things, particularly budget-wise, can you, without me having to bring it up every time, tell us, I mean, the extra money for mentor, is that houses or services? Will it cost us on match money at all to change, or are they needing this for, is there going to be a hit any kind of way with federal match?
That money is a person. Let's look at it that way. Because we took mentor off of the admission freeze. They are now able to fill those beds. We said one at a time. You know, in the old days, you'd see contract amendments for $500,000, $750,000, a lot of money because they were putting so many people in there. But they're only allowed to do it one at a time. And so we're basically putting those H bands back into that system.
Okay,
So we're filling beds, so that contract amendment equals a.
So that should pick up federal match money?
Oh, yeah, oh, no, that's.
So that's a positive for federal match?
Right, it is.
Okay. I'm just worried the changes we make, if it has consequences, particularly with match, and I often forget to ask that question, but that's such an important part of the equation, and y'all try to remember to say something. I mean, if we're impacting federal match, I think we need to understand it. So that doesn't have anything to do with
No,
you answered my question.
I think you need to, and I would be more than happy to sit down with whoever wants to and talk about funded waiver slots, how we move people into residential, and that is a good training, a depth of knowledge that we can add for you in a different setting than the commission meeting. But that is a good layer of training that I think that you would benefit from.
Well, see, that's about 4 work sessions you got to,
Well, we can do that like a one-on-one.
Can we double our salary?
Yes, I will double your salary.
Thank you very much.
But we can.
Has that authority.
We can do that through a one-on-one, because not everybody needs that. Some people have been here a little longer and they understand it. But if we, things are very easy to confuse because we talk about investigations, we talk about auditing, we talk about reports, we talk about fines. This is not in the health and safety venue.
It's not our, and again, some of the history in this one was basically, I recall sitting with our executive director with several legislators who were like, well, you need to put something in your internal audit that has this warning beacon that needs to go up without you guys having to act on it, as a commission, given that. And that's where this came from. I mean, it literally was, somebody looked at me and said, I think I was said, Mr. Vice Chair, you need to put this in. We want to see this as legislation.
Chairman, I mean, I hear what our executive, now just, all right, financial sanction, it says financial sanction by way of a contract withhold is only applicable to repeat findings as they relate to, and then those things. And the sanction will only apply when a follow-up audit, blah, 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 finds except the correction action is no good. Then the provider then will begin, it just sounds bigger than what you were describing. I mean, it sounds like provider may be doing something and maybe it overlaps with what you already have, but here we are dealing with this document and it doesn't sound like such a cutout to me by the words that are used so that's why I'm concerned about it. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that the document gets us back to you. I'm trying to get it to make sure that everything the internal auditor comes up with that fits in that category, whether it be narrow or broad, comes back to us and via us, you, because we'd look to you, what should we do? All right, so there we are. I'm still gonna make the motion, and then at some point in time, if it's not kosher, that's fine.
Yeah.
But Chairman, thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, and again, I'm just kind of bringing up information as well.
Thank you.
Again, I have some history with this, so.
This goes to public comment
Yeah.
next, and then it'll come back to us.
So we have a motion coming out of committee to put it out for public comment, correct,
So moved.
Commissioner Blackwood?
Well, I don't know
No.
that we made a motion to put it in
Okay.
comment.
Then
It was
to
just
be,
going to be.
It
It's
just
in
is.
compliance with our.
it just is, okay,
So you don't need a motion? You don't need a vote?
okay.
It just goes to public
All right.
comment, you have to be edited, and then it
There we
goes.
go.
I move that we accept this as information, and we move on.
Exactly.
I think that is appropriate, Commissioner Wellington, so we will move on. Which I think that is all the items for the Finance and Audit Committee. Thank you very much, Commissioner Blackwood, for your work on that. Okay, moving on to tab 7, under the Policy Committee would recognize Commissioner Malfris with regard to 60312DD immunization procedure for regional centers.
May I say one thing before we
Yes.
start? I'm getting a lot of texts from our public that are saying they're having trouble hearing us. So when we speak, if you don't mind, either hold that mask away or lower it a little bit and speak as clearly and as loudly as you possibly can. So we can make sure our folks that are listening can hear us, okay? They didn't say you, Senator Thompson.
I've taken mine down every time, so. Hope they can hear me.
If somebody,
What about you?
somebody's accusing me of being quiet, that'd be the first time in my life.
You need to speak. The microphone's behind you, Rob.
Behind me? Oh, right here, okay.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
Thank
that
you.
was addressed.
Thank you for that information. Commissioner Malfris, recognize you.
Thank you, sir. I'm of course the chairman of the policy committee and Barry Malvers, and I'm going to allow Ms. Susan Beck, who does a wonderful job, to go through the details of these, policies that we've been through, because they're primarily, were diverted to staff. The first one is 603-12-DD. Go ahead, Susan.
Sure, I'm just moving over to the speaker because, as you know, I'm not a shouter anyway, and with the mask, it sure doesn't help. So yes, we're on 603-12 immunization procedures for DDSN regional centers. This was posted for the 10 business day external review in which we received 0 comments. The changes largely just reflect those in consultation with our medical director to bring the directive into regulatory compliance. We've also, in our cleaning and revising process for directives, determined that it would be more sensible to include some of the vaccination directive portions in this directive, so we do not have unneeded numbers of directives. And so those are the changes we present before you for approval today.
Any questions with regard to 603-12-DD? Did the policy committee have a vote on this one? Did they vote to approve that?
So
We
the
don't need a motion in a second?
procedure is that it was delegated to staff for revision,
Okay,
so we're
gotcha.
bringing it back.
Got it, okay. So, you do need, so would entertain a motion to approve policy 603-12-DD as proposed.
So moved, Mr. Chairman, this is Stephanie Rawlinson.
Second from Commissioner Thomas. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then that policy is approved as presented. And then if I understand correctly, then Susan, tabs 8, 9, and 10, the policies there are all made irrelevant by what we just adopted. Is that correct?
Yes, most related to that is the vaccination directive 60308. We're collapsing any information we felt like was continued to be pertinent in the directive you just approved. So that's recommended to be marked obsolete. if you'd like to do this as a group.
I
And,
think we can do it as a group.
okay, and then in tab 9, you have the latex protocol directive that again pertains just to regional centers. Rufus Britt, staff, and he, of course, reviewed that directive and determined that that information is already handled elsewhere, so that directive can be marked obsolete. Then 30006, the Energy Management System Operations and Parameters Directive, we're also recommending, after Clark's team has reviewed that, to mark it obsolete. It pertains to regional center facility, air conditioning temperature controls, which we feel like is not necessary in a directive. It can be handled in other means. So yes, that group we're recommending that you approve to mark obsolete.
Okay.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Real quick, just by way of information again. Now, if somebody out in the world heard something related to them, the latex thing or whatever, to see the actual document, where do they go to online to see the document that we're about to vote on, so they can go down it and read it and say, oh, here's what I gotta do now?
So well, again, this is pertains to regional centers, so anyone who would be interested in that, they would go to the website under providers, and then it's listed under directives and standards, and then go forth. But it currently exists there. It will be taken down, and we'll ask, if it is approved to be marked obsolete, it will be taken down,
All
however.
right, so they go to the website. Mary, if you can help me on this, I would go to the website, I look for what?
You look for, across the top, you look for providers. And then when you click on that, there's a list that drops down and it says directives, standards, and manuals. You go to that page and then you can find current directives and look for it there.
Okay.
So technically, this one won't be there if we vote them obsolete. We're actually removing them from the directives.
Yeah.
But it'll be
okay,
combined
right,
with others.
Yeah, but anything else that would show up by way of policy, they can
That's where
call
they,
that and they will know what we did. Okay, thank you.
that's where we keep all the directives and then the ones that are out for public comment, they're even noted that they're out for
It
public
says,
comment.
you're right,
So
right. And there's a tab,
just. click.
24 hours a day, people can comment on anything, even if it's not up for review.
Does anyone have any questions as to the 3 directives that we're dealing with at this time? Is there any opposition to us dealing with these as a group? Does anyone feel like we need to address them individually?
No.
Seeing no comment with regard to that, I would entertain a motion to mark as obsolete Directive 603-08DD, 603-10-DD, and 300-06-DD.
So moved.
I second Stephanie
There,
Rollins.
no,
Yep. Commissioner Malfris making the motion, Commissioner Rawlinson making the second. Thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And unanimously, those 3 policies are marked as obsolete. Moving on, other committee updates. Commissioner Malfris.
Yeah, we do have another committee update very quickly. We just wanted to, for information purposes, to let everybody know that the committee has referred 14 directives associated with information security to be combined, and they'll be out for public comment whenever those are combined. And we just wanted to let you know that the policy committee has done that for the staff to do. And there's also 3 additional directives that we've referred to staff to review, focused on the care facility for individuals with intellectual disabilities. And also be for the district director of facilities and that sort of thing, and regional centers. And I did want to say too, that I'm very proud of the work that the policy committee has done. We're staff quite busy, so we hope that even though we're not going to be, we will be working in November on some other major policies, but after November we will not be meeting, or at least our plan right now, unless it's an emergency, is not to meet in December, so that we can give the staff time to catch up to us and get back rolling big in January.
Any questions with regard to other committee updates from anyone? Commissioner Malfris, thank you, and thanks staff for your hard work that you guys are rolling through these policies for us. Been a lot of work you guys have done. Thank you. Moving on then, the next item on the agenda is a COVID update and would recognize Rufus Britt to give us that. Thank you, Rufus.
Thank you, Chairman. Real briefly, I'll give you a verbal report. I do want to direct your attention to the, speaking of mic, yes, sir. To our website where we post data concerning COVID positive information for our regional centers. And also we have archived 34 situation reports that detail the agency's response and also information that we share with our We have a total of 1,407 individuals who have tested positive for COVID. The breakdown is as follows. In our regional centers, 132 individuals that we support. And in the community residential settings, we have 369. For our staff, there's a total system-wide 906 staff that test positive for COVID-19, 259 working in our regional centers, and 647 working in our community network. We have the unfortunate data to report regarding fatalities. System-wide, we have a total of 29 fatalities involving individuals that we support. And the breakdown is as follows. 12 individuals resided in our regional centers and 12 were affiliated with our contract provider network. And again, our hearts and prayers go out to those families. For our workforce, we have a total of 13 fatalities with 4 being members of our workforce, SCDDSN, at the regional centers, and 9 individuals affiliated with our contract provider network. On a more positive note, I would like to say that the regional centers have done a remarkable job as well as our provider network. We're seeing a downward trajectory in the number of positive cases that we're seeing, and that's a testament to the commitment of our staff to exercise transmission-based precautions, as well as members of our provider network. For the regional centers specifically, we've had consecutive weeks up until recently of no positive new cases in dorms under quarantine. As of late, and it started last week and this week, we're starting to see a uptick in confirmed positives in individuals displaying signs and symptoms of illness in a couple dorms at the Coastal Center. And so Coastal Center has a couple dorms on quarantine. From a bonus pay update, just want to give you an update since the inception of the Commission's approval of the bonus plan, we have rewarded a total of a number of bonuses totaling $419,000, and that sounds like a lot of money. But when you look at the risk that folks are taking day in and day out and the size of our centers, this is insignificant and, in my opinion, definitely necessary for operations. When you back up fringe, and we have it listed as hazard pay, but I like to refer to it as hero pay because these folks truly are heroes. When you back up fringe, which is around $31,000, from May to date, we've expended $383,000. So when you look at the size of our centers and the size of the budget for operations, in close to $90 million, I would say that this shows that we're being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And again, this is a necessary measure to make sure that we have a stable workforce. Lastly, I'll just end by thanking internally the staff that have maintained their commitment to carrying out duties despite COVID. We hear, a lot about what's wrong with government, but today I want to highlight what's right about it. And we have thousands of staff in our contract provider network and here at DDSN that have remained committed to carrying out the mission since the onset of the pandemic. So I know I echo Mary's sentiment that we thank all those staff that, again, have braved and come to work day in and day out since the start of the pandemic here in our state.
Chairman, could I just one second?
Certainly.
We all are in this terrible situation. So many of us having to stay at home and avoid contact as much as we can. And I just want to thank you and the staff and all the people that are out there where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And I think the commission should just, what can we do? Let's just give the staff a round of applause for what they're doing. I think it's just incredible, and I doubt if I would, my age and some physical things I've gone through, they probably wouldn't let me be on staff, but I'm just amazed at it. I mean, you know, you fight to fight, and I don't know where you get the money, but 8 months ago, when Barry and I came on the commission, I think our first finance meeting was how little money we had, so I don't know what magic went on to come up with the extra money, but well done is all I have to say, and I guess later on we can ask questions about that, but I don't want to rock the boat. I mean, I think the focus is, wow, you all done a great job, and I know it's been tough during this time for you all, especially because you're dealing with, it's right there. I mean, you're dealing with the problem right there in the facility, so well done.
Well, thank you, sir. And again, our provider network, the same way. And that goes to case managers and EIs.
Everybody.
Yes, I tell you, this state has performed remarkably well, you know, and it's a testament to Mary's leadership and the leadership of executive directors throughout the state. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
How are we doing on PPE? Are we in good shape on that, or where are we
You
at?
know, and I'm going to toot the horn of Candace Golston, David DeTroya, Rob McBurney. They have done phenomenal in making sure the agency has been well ahead of supply chain shortages with respect to personal protective equipment or PPE. At central office, I've never seen the inventory of personal protective equipment to the extent that we've been able to, and we hadn't exploited this, we've been able to help out a number of contract provider agencies who are serving folks who are COVID positive that have run out of masks, or run out of face shields, or run out of gowns. That central office, you know, where we house the majority of bureaucrats, we've done enough work to be able to have PPE to avail to our contract provider network. And that's just, again, a testament to the commitment of the workforce in this building and their commitment to emergency operations.
And we've gotten the word out to the network. They know that they can ask that for that. Yeah.
Correct. In fact, whenever we're notified of a COVID positive, we actually reach out to the provider network. And we've been doing that, again, since the start of the pandemic. And so that's been a nicety. And again, we don't tout it, but, and we've also shared information regarding local emergency management operations for each county so that the agencies operate and have that local connection for PPE and also education. So.
Great.
Yes, sir.
I think maybe we should tout it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. That's well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rufus. Okay. Next item on the agenda then, under tab 11, is the Office of State Auditor Report and Corrective Action Plan. Recognize Chris Clark for that.
Thank you.
Chris.
Tab 11. Couple things I'd like to note. First of all, you all received this report in a prior commission meeting. The problem we had is we did not provide you with our corrective action plan, which actually had to be submitted prior to the September commission meeting. So we have provided you a copy of that response. Again, being an auditor and being very familiar with materiality concepts and risks and so forth, I'm very proud of this report. Of course, we would love to have one with 0 recommendations made. The state auditor's office comes in and does a fine-tooth comb review of our area, and you can see, if you review the procedures that they performed, how granular they get in some of their procedures. I want to note that this is from fiscal year 2019. Most of my team was not even here in 2019. I joined in June 2019. My director of accounting and contracts joined in August or September, I think. And then Kelly Anderson, who's in charge of finance, was put in her role after I got here as well. So that doesn't excuse the errors, and there are a couple things we're still going to have as repeats that we know this year, because again, we didn't find out these were issues until just recently. So after fiscal year 20 was over. To put in context, the only thing in here that really bothered me was the composite reservoir account, and that is our consumer funds. That's where we aggregate all the funds for our regional centers where folks' Social Security and SSI comes in. And we maintain that. So when we're dealing with consumer funds, we get sensitive, of course, related to anything related to that area. We had the background on this because sometimes auditors really aren't good about explaining context of findings. We had one account that was not reconciled in a 5-day time period. It was 5 days late. We had 2 people that were trained to do the reconciliation. One was on medical leave and one person went out sick on top of the person that was out on medical leave. So we've had to add a 3rd layer. Instead of having backup, we have to have a backup to the backup. So we've addressed that now. And so again, we're going to see that probably as a finding as well when we get 2020 done. So they'll start 2020's audit after 2021's over. So anyways, we would ask that you would approve the corrective action plan. If you have changes to it, the way you find the corrective action is if you look under each bolded area, you will find at the end of listed each procedure whether they found exceptions or not.
Chris, I'm sorry, which tab are we in?
11.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, 11, okay, perfect, thank you.
So if you look at, for example, page 4, that's where the findings start. And management's response is below. For example, the bank account that was not reported, it had 0 balance. That's why it's not in skis and it wasn't reported. You know, we need to report 0 balances as well. Operating leases, that's a problem we inherited. Folks at regional centers were able to enter into leases for copiers and stuff without involving central office. We put a stop to that. All leases now come through our contracts division and procurement and IT. And so we have all these copiers and stuff out there. Nobody has copies of the leases.
Help a brother out here.
Okay. And then, so we've nipped that in the bud in regards to that being a practice, and then we continue to work with these lease companies to obtain these documents that are needed. And subsequent events, I mean, when you're talking about an $800 million organization and you didn't report a $7,000 bill that got paid late, you know, that's pretty immaterial in my mind. And then on page 5 is the reservoir account that I mentioned earlier. And that is a big concern of mine, but I feel that we've addressed it properly and we'll have to monitor it. So anyways, those are the findings. And,
but if I understand you correctly, because of the timing of all this, when they do the next audit, we're probably going to see that one again, even though we've taken corrective action.
Correct.
Just didn't have enough time to go into effect before the next audit period.
Correct.
Okay. Audit lag. Any further questions, Chris?
I would just like to commend you on your work on this, and I think it's wonderful. That's all the findings they found.
Well, that's my team. I can take 0 credit for this. We do have a good set of group downstairs that's very committed to the game. And, you know, we're challenging them to step their game up. It's kind of stressful for a lot of them down there right now as we try to grow and expand and become more better at what we do. But thank you for that. And I'll make sure that they're recognized for your comments.
Chris, I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
No, sir.
Chairman, may I ask Chris?
Yes, sir.
I noticed we've got a payroll section here. Maybe this is the appropriate time to ask a question about payroll. We did the hazard hero pay. I like his designation about on the hero pay. How did we get that money? Where did we come from in the mix on revenue resources or whatever?
Well, the first thing I would say is that we're in the process of trying to obtain provider relief funds through the CARES Act, through the state, to get reimbursed for those funds. Of course, we cannot wait on that decision or that funding availability to make that decision because, you know, Rufus and his team are struggling to get people to come to work, and they're putting their lives and their family's health in jeopardy. So these folks had to actually be working with someone with a positive case, right? It's not just that they show up at work. They're actually working with live bullets, someone that's tested positive.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And prior to COVID, you know, we talked about the regional centers. There have been a lot of efforts pre-COVID to streamline staffing, calibrate staffing levels. And so we were poised to have a surplus.
Yes.
That was the point I was getting at
Very
today.
important what he said, and he was
Yeah.
at the back.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that
Yeah.
gets reiterated
Yeah.
in case everybody didn't hear it, because that's outstanding.
That was my secondary
I love
point.
hearing stuff like that.
Right, that was my secondary point. We were running under budget and projecting a surplus prior to even COVID hitting. We were looking at about $2 or $3 million in positive cash flow prior to COVID. So we were running below expenditures, not only at a state agency level, but also the regional districts as well.
Congratulations to you and to Mary and all the staff. Good job. Very good job. I mean, wow, that's meeting the emergency before there was an emergency, and we had something to go to rather than, what do you do? So I congratulate staff for that move for efficiency. And this is the first chance I've had to really ask the question, where'd the money come from? Because we were down, so I recall that was a scary meeting where you had to tell us, we were down to, what was it, Mary, $150,000 or something?
$7,000.
That was prior to, June 2019 that's what we ended up with in the bank.
Brother, that's frightening for an agency that's $800 million agency, and
I think it was 2 hours of operations, I think.
Yeah, it's scary.
At the time, 712 million. We knew that coming in when I came in, which just seems like the only time I ever come into a place is when they have money troubles. But the whole idea was to look for the efficiencies in, not just the efficiencies, but also any money that we were not billing properly. So there was a lot of things that happened, whether it was trying to get people that were not on Medicaid, that were being state funded, to make sure that we got them on Medicaid, so we were able to match them with the federal match. There was a lot of things. There's a whole host of stuff that we were able to turn the fiscal.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's
If I could add one thing,
Yes.
only because it's such an important point, and I'm gonna thank you for bringing it up, is prior to this year, 18 and 19 and 20, this organization had operational losses of 14, 10, and $4 million. We're driving it down. And this year, cash went up 3 million. And I think if you do an apples to apples comparison, because Chris is able to, pay liabilities on time as opposed to prior years, we could be as high as plus 8, 9, or 10 this year. So the answer is the budget that Rufus talks about is a function of improving revenues and closing expenses to get to a positive operation.
Now, why I'm particularly, I'm chairman of a committee that's not met yet, and one of the reasons is the legislature is not in session fully. But what I'm planning on doing, and if y'all would help me, and I don't care who prepares it, but I would like a document that says, here's the history, here's what's happened, here's what we have done. But what I'm kind of calling it in my mind is the new team, not to say anything bad about previous teams and activities and all that. But when I was in the legislature, and we're talking even as far back 15 years ago, and then up until the time, my last year, we had real problems with this agency in the legislature. It had a terrible reputation for financial management and accountability. And I think the new team is turning that around substantially, and this is great news. But I'd like to see it in writing, and then when I and anybody else wants to go with me, head over to the legislature at some point in time, or maybe even just an independent communication with them, might be from Mary, 2 members of significant committees, update on how we are, as we're asking for more money, from the, to help cover us on some of these expenses. However, it's such good news. I want to report in. I want to give them good news that this is very positive. I'm extremely happy about what I'm hearing, this sort of thing and other things that are our approach, our being the staff's approach, Mary's approach. So thank you very much. I won't go further. Thank you.
And the approach is you take nothing for granted, leave nothing on the floor. And where they used to say the juice isn't worth the squeeze, we squeeze everything. So it is, because it's taxpayer dollars, and I'm a taxpayer, so I've always felt, and I've worked in nonprofits my whole life, that we have to be good stewards of this money. We have to show what we are getting for the money, what are we giving for the money, and how we're using it. That's just, we have to do that. It's just, it's in our DNA.
The other comment I'd like to make is it's a collaborative effort. Rufus and his team are key. He's always really monitoring residential placements, ensuring that we get them Medicaid eligible and so forth. We've got our eligibility division that ensures Medicaid eligibility obtained, and that we're monitoring all kinds of things as an agency. It's not a fiscal success story like my department in my area. It's an agency success story because there are so many people hammering away at this outside the finance team. So I just want to make sure that's clear too, that it's not under my guidance. Mary and Pat, they've identified a lot of leaks, and we've been closing them up steadily.
And I would add, it's somewhat coincidental with our new chairman of the finance committee taking over. So that matches the upward drift also.
Yes.
You're hogging too much.
Particularly the appearance of that direction.
Thank you, President, for all that you.
Just to reiterate how far we've come, you said operating losses in 18 of 14 million, operating losses in 19 of 10 million, and operating losses in 20 of 4 million?
Move back here, 17, 18, 19.
I mean 17.
And in 20, we turned it around.
That's what I thought. 17. So it's 17, 18, and 19.
Right.
Thank you.
So the corrective action plan.
Right. So at this, any additional questions with regard to the audit or the corrective action plan? Would then entertain a motion to accept the audit and the corrective action plan as presented.
So moved.
Commissioner Miller, do we have a second?
Second. Barry
Malphus, thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, that audit report and corrective action plan are adopted. Next item on the agenda is an update on the band B&I switch.
Hey, Tad, as well.
Thank you, Chris.
As well, you will see a micro print document. Sorry for how small it is. We're using a tool called Microsoft Planner to maintain our project for this goal of the switch for January 1. What we want to do is highlight and make the commission aware of the steps that are involved in something that seems on the surface to be a very easy transition and thing to accomplish. Once you look up under the hood and start going down in the roots of the organization, you realize there's much more involved. There are 59 steps here, which many of them have multiple steps within them. If you look at the assigned to column, you can see we have a great deal of staff involvement across the organization, in IT, in operations, and eligibility, and policy. We've got everyone involved. So I want to highlight that there are a couple items on here that are critical. On page 2, item 23. 36 and 37 all kind of come together, so I'll talk to them as a group. Trying to really identify and get solid landing on what the gap figure is between how much we're funding and how much we're spending. And then how do we go about, what do we do with that gap money? And land on some recommendations to the commission by the next commission meeting as to a variety of options we may have before us. And so I'm going to hit this hard starting next week. I've been kind of covered up with spending plan and getting ready for this meeting with all this other stuff we've got going on. But starting Monday, I'm turning my focus towards this project, and we're going to be pulling in a lot of other folks. The other thing I would like to note is that we met with the DSN providers. We asked the coalition and the human service providers to nominate folks to represent their groups and to come meet with us. We met with them on October 2nd. They brought some good questions and suggestions with them. We took minutes of that, and we will be digesting those as well next week. They're coming in again on the 20th, which is next Tuesday, for a follow-up meeting. And so they are at the table, and they are getting a chance to express their concerns and their thoughts and suggestions as we move this project. Also, you will note on the project timeline that there are some more long-term type goals, like getting HHS rates fixed. If we hold this project up for that, we'll be another year or two probably. One problem is getting the cost reports done, which I have an update for that when we get to the admin contract. I was gonna update you there on that. But anyways, I hope this is kind of what you're looking for. Based on what you requested at the last meeting, some accountability and some awareness of what's going on. The other thing I would like to mention that's a huge hurdle is we have 3 waivers that we operate, and the rates are all over the place. They're not consistent, yet the underlying service is virtually identical. So I'll talk about that some when we get to the admin contract as
That's
well.
what we need a workshop on. But Mary, if you want another workshop, number 4. Boy, they're identical services with different rates. Wow. Okay, that's a mouthful.
So when I get to the admin contract that's later on in the presentation, I'll actually talk more specifically about what that means, because when we talk about the admin contract, we got to quit splitting rates with providers. Right now, the way we get reimbursed is we take something off the top, if you will, theoretically. It doesn't always happen that way. We actually don't even have a top. They can take off the top on some rates. So I'm gonna get into that more detail, but for the purpose of this, that is also a struggle, is to figure out how do we tackle that? Because right now what we've done is we've blended into a rate, band B and I rate, and we've got to tease that apart and pay providers for the actual service. So there's a lot to be done in that area as well. Is there any feedback on this?
This is all about, let me make sure I'm just straight here. It's complicated and layered, as Chairman Robbins sometimes uses that term. I like it. Now this is relative to going to fee-for-service. This whole thing, this chart, I love the chart. This is fantastic. It's kind of a flow chart in a way too. It relates to going to fee-for-service for part of the agency. It's not the whole agency, apparently. You've still got 39 entities out there, that are public entities that are still on the band, will still be on the band system. Is that correct?
Well, we're taking band structure that's a bunch of different bands, and all the residential bands that have a residential component, we're not tackling those yet. They're on the side. So you asked me earlier what a band B and I was.
Mm-hmm.
That's these at-home folks.
Yep.
Those are the ones we're tackling first.
Okay.
So we're trying to split the baby, if you will, and tackle what's theoretically the easiest part. Residential may end up being easier. I have to do this part first.
Is it B or I that we're?
B and I.
B and I, we're both doing it.
You have to do it at the same time or it won't work.
Okay.
If we flip, the issue is if you analyze band Bs, providers as a whole are upside down on those. And we're not funding them at their expense level. So they're losing money on those folks. But the band Is are so heavily funded in excess of what they're spending, they're making tons of money on the Is. And so we aggregate them.
The Is are the permanent ones at home.
Those are the CS waiver folks that are at home and they have no residential component.
Yeah.
And so if we aggregate, if we just flip the Is, then we're taking all this cash out of the provider network that they need to help fund these upside down Bs.
Mm-hmm.
If we flip just the Bs, and we got to come to the table with a bunch of new money that's already being funded by the Is, if you will. So that's why we have to look at them.
Okay. Let me ask as far as, for lack of a better term, enforcement on the various entities and where they are. Surely that's not you trying to do that. Is there somebody that's working with and you know, somebody in the agency that's more or less the contact person that's like, why aren't you further along? Or I don't know what question to ask, but you know, where we are, I mean, the transition that is going on, who is that?
Pat and I are kind of the project managers, if you will. But we have a bunch of folks on our team that they're delegated tasks and play key roles as we go through this. And so
far we're on track.
We'll see after this week coming up. This coming week's real critical. So, but I kind of put people on alert. I'm like, make sure you're available.
Everybody's aware, they understand the commission's dedicated.
Correct. Loud and clear.
Okay.
All right.
Unless it's a catastrophe, we're not backing off.
We understand that.
Okay, no more extensions?
Understand that.
Understand that. What else do you need from us? What do we need to do for you guys? What obstacles are we putting up? Or what do we need to author? I mean, what else do you need from us to make this happen? We want this to happen. What else do we need to do? And you don't have to have an answer for me right now, but if there's stuff that you need from us, let us know so that we can do our part too.
Can I answer that? What I really would be happy if commissioners who are not fully understanding of what Van Biesen is and how the money flows, and especially when we get into the residential area, we only have one rate, we don't have queuing scales. I would really like them to make an appointment with me, sit down and go through this in depth so they can understand this whole issue deeply. That I think is probably, having a good depth of knowledge about this. You know, the Van Dyes are capped, the other ones are not. It's just really, please, have an appointment with me, we will sit down and talk about it one-on-one.
I'm talking about
small groups.
My questions have been relative to making sure, as we throw the terms around in particular, that the public, whoever the public is, and hears these terms, understands kind of what we're talking about, so that it's not mumbo jumbo with a bunch of acronyms that people don't understand. And I don't know if that was directed at me.
No. I just want everybody, because we have such new members.
I mean, that's one of the things I have been working on, understanding the difference and understanding B&I, B for service, how the two relate, what we've already done, where we are. I love the chart. The chart is great. That's what my question was. Who's kind of monitoring the chart at this point? You. Well, you got a load of you, brother.
Well, I got good folks to help. They're not all looking at me like you got a lot.
So we're okay. I don't want to hear it after the fact. We're okay as far as the commission and what we're doing to facilitate what we have told you all that this is our policy to get done.
Yeah, I think Mary's point is when we bring back these solutions, these options, for you to really interpret why we need to do A, B versus C, you got to come from an educated base to know why we need to consider the different options that are before you.
I would venture to say that a lot of the people listening from the provider network have a lot better understanding of these terms and these issues than the people sitting in this room at these 6 tables, me included.
No.
So I think the more educated we are on that terminology, so when it comes time for us to discuss, that we'll have a better base of knowledge to know exactly what we're talking about.
Well, I'm hoping with these workshops we're talking about doing, I think 3 or 4 of them that we wanted to do, that we get some inclusion in this, and we don't have to super divide it all, because this is an essential part of how the funding works. So we need to understand it, and then where we're trying to move to, which is fee for service, which is a much more efficient way and precise way to do it, particularly when it comes to matching how they're funded versus how we're funded and getting the federal match. Now, that's the big ticket item, and then how all that works. You know, all right, the nuances are fine, but that's generally, I think, where we're coming from. That is that we want to move to fee for service, period.
And keep in mind that all private providers are already on fee for service, and that every state in the union is already on fee for service. Just keep those 2 things in mind.
Mr. Chairman.
That should be on a poster throughout this.
I'm gonna go Commissioner Rollinson, Commissioner Blackwood, Commissioner Miller, just because everybody.
As I look at the chart, it looks good, Chris. And I just want to say, it looks like based on your dates, we are on target to hit that December 31st deadline. And I just commend your staff for taking this project, dividing it up, and actually accomplishing this. And I know it's
we're shooting for it.
I understand it's a tremendous undertaking, and I just want you all to know that we appreciate the fact that you have taken the time to do this and lay this out for us to show us what steps you're going through to get this to the December 31st deadline. Thank you.
Commissioner.
So, Chris, did you say that you're short-staffed? I can't remember. I felt like you said you were hiring some people at one point. I was trying to find the email. I couldn't find it.
We had a lot of turnover when I got here.
Okay.
I lost pretty much every director I had retired.
Okay.
They were all retirement age except for one.
Yeah.
So I had to get all them in place. And then as we've moved through, some folks have self-selected out and said, I'm not up for this challenge. Thank you very much. And then we had a termination that we had to do. So yes, we're still rebuilding. We've got another team member. My area that's really hurt bad is cost analysis. It was decimated. Casey Sternenberg went to Babcock Center. She might even be on this call listening. Chuck Norman left. Donna Johnson retired, and then we had a termination down there, and it was already short one staff. So I had 0 cost analysis people just 2 months ago. Diane started. So that's what's hurting, because all this is analysis.
Right, well,
Yeah.
that's why.
And then same with cost reports. I don't have a cost report preparer at all. So there's 5 of us doing part-time duty trying to get these cost reports done. So we have posted a position to get that back. It's always been here. We've always had 2 or 3, in fact, cost report staff, because you have the quality assurance, the provider cost reports. So the provider cost reports have to be QA'd once they come in. We have 30 days to do that. Review every single cost report.
And how
So
many are there?
there's 38 times, well, there's 38 providers, but every provider turns in 6 or 7 cost reports.
So we had slots for people to be doing this job and it just wasn't getting done for whatever, I mean.
Well,
in the past.
We had, yeah, I'm not saying under you, Chris. I'm back always.
No, but Pat and Mary committed, you know, they've made it very clear that they're committed to get the team behind me that I need. The issue is with me coming from a private sector, I don't just hire people willy-nilly. I got to get everything out of the people I have, push out inefficiencies, push out dumb stuff that we're doing, then assess who I need. And that's taken me a year to figure, because Pat, day one, he's like, "Look, tell me what you need." I'm like, "I don't know what I need. I'm new. I mean, give me some time and I'll tell you." So.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes, sir. You mentioned critical this week. Expound on that a little bit for me, please.
Thank you. This coming week,
Yes.
a lot of these dates that Commissioner Rawlinson just mentioned, if I don't have a good week this week, some of those dates are going to be in jeopardy, and I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to get this done still.
Any points of reference?
I don't understand.
Maybe he's not interested in discussing that in public.
I guess some of the analysis and really looking at, Pat and Mary and I, and Rufus too, we've all been kind of tossing around concepts of how this is going to roll out. So what we've got to do is not only analyze our current situation as a state, but also on a per provider level, and then start analyzing how do we go about pushing this back out into the system. That's the heavy lift before us next week. And if I can't get that done, you know, all the other stuff starts to lag.
But it looks good in your eyesight.
We'll know Monday when I hit it.
We can send you a memo on Friday.
That'd probably be a good update for us to get.
That would be a good update for us to get. We, and we don't, and we would strongly prefer a positive update.
I'll lie to you.
But a truthful update. I want to know the actual, I don't want to hear good.
No bad news.
I'll lie to you.
We're committed to telling this commission the truth.
Yeah, that's what we want. All right. Any additional questions regarding where we are with Band B&I stuff? Everybody good? If you got again, I like Mary's idea. I like this idea that the more educated that we as a commission get, the better off we are trying to decide when Chris brings, the big thing is Chris brings us options. We got to decide between option A and B of how we're doing some things. We got to have enough knowledge to know what we're voting on, and not getting that necessarily here.
Chairman, I want to just thank them for here we are. I mean, this is a major move, a major change. I want to thank Mary, Chris, thank you very much. All of the staff that's doing all this. This is quite a move that is being made, and I congratulate staff for, you know, getting us down the road and pulling this off. You know, we still have more to do, but this is a big hit.
You know, we need to be thanking the providers too, because they're gonna have to learn this whole new way of doing business.
Exactly, thank you.
And yeah, and I think that, because being a provider, you know, and thinking how I would analyze my business and how I would move it forward. And that is something that is also in our mindset. Who do we have to go out and give a hand to?
Could I ask you this question? Why isn't it clear, and correct me now if I'm misunderstanding something by way of the connects, if we are doing the funding in a different way, but it gives us more money ultimately, we have more money to get by way of federal match. And that gives us more money that we can use out with the providers to spend money on everybody that comes along and has a slot. Does that kind of connect? Isn't that a correct financial connection?
So the issue is everything that's upside down right now is state funds. That $9 million that's out there that is our rough estimate now is state funds. It's funding a lot of stuff, a lot of sometimes operational inefficiency, sometimes not. It could be people's reserves. It could be other bands that are underfunded that, like the residential bands, haven't been adjusted in years and years and years. So the issue is for us to draw a match, we've got to get Josh Baker to agree to change our rates. First step is getting cost reports caught up. He's not going to give us a rate increase when we can't prove that we have the cost to support it, because everything's cost-based. So that's why getting these cost reports is so important.
Go back to my essential point, though. There turns out to be an essential relationship if we had more by way of savings for the way we are reimbursed, and then we can then turn that around and turn that into more match money.
Correct.
Or incorrect?
Yes, we want to take that $9 million, make it match money instead of 100% state, and we can get $30 million back in the system.
That's right.
Thus, Chris, I mean, the message to the providers is, what we are doing here is not to try to hurt or diminish. It's actually, we will have more money to be able to dispense. You're going to see more money. So it might be difficult and hard to go to a different system, but ultimately it will be better for them financially if they can see a bit of the long term, because we'll have more money to be able to deal with helping folks that need help.
And we can serve more people.
Yeah,
Thank you.
They've always.
Thank you. That's it. We can serve more people.
And so, and again, I think where the angst is coming from, we had spent the last 35 years training them to think in a different way, which is if you're having a shortfall over here, the way we're going to take care of you is we're going to pay you more money in this band over here. So we trained how to manipulate the band system to all these providers for decades. And that's what we're having to untrain. It's hard to undo 35 years of training on that. I mean, better for worse, part of the way we got York back on track financially was looking at it and saying, we can do better under the band system if we go and do this. We got to untrain that. I mean, that's where their angst is. I agree with you 100%. Long term, no doubt it's going to be better, but that's where their angst, in my opinion, that's where, you correct me wrong. I mean, we've been training them to think a certain way, and we're having to undo decades.
But that free market, that fee for service will also up performance, because you are now competing for every person, and you are trying to provide the best services possible to say, use me because we do this, this, and this. So I think it's better for the individuals ultimately, and that's my goal.
Amen.
Folks will have better choices to make.
But we're disrupting a system that some of these people have gotten very used to dealing with.
That's all they've known.
That's where we're
Many of
getting
these
these things
people.
from on their part.
Yeah, their finance teams, for example, most of these finance directors, all they've known is the capitated band system. So you're trying to challenge them now to think like a for-profit business.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a government years of.
Yep.
And they may have to make modifications to make it work. I think this is where the pain comes.
Mm-hmm.
But if they could just think long term, you're gonna have more to deal with later on. And it's more precise, as Mary just said, we'll be able to serve more people, and that fulfills our key and essential function.
Which is to serve more people for less money.
As many as possible with the money that we have.
That's exactly right.
And that's food services, as Commissioner Malphus keeps driving on.
Thank you.
And Chris, this checklist, it's super, so I would recommend that you keep us up to date. This checklist helps us out tremendously, so.
Yes, sir.
Send us an email Friday about what we talked about.
I'll tell you
Okay.
I'll tell you what's really helpful, and I've seen these done several ways, but a lot of people put it on like a Google Sheets thing, and then everybody we're on it as a watch, and that way we can watch as y'all update and get to a percentage, and that way we can kind of see it as you update it.
This is inside Microsoft Teams,
Yes.
which is what we're using for this. And it's a shareable,
Yeah.
collaborative
So we
tool.
can see it, we don't necessarily need to be able to do the changes, but I think that.
It'll cut down on the phone calls to Chris.
Yes, definitely.
and he needs next week to work on that.
Right.
Yes, he does.
So let's not harass him.
Leave him alone.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Anything else for Chris with regard to this?
Good job.
Good job.
Excellent.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for realizing where we want to go with this.
Yes.
That's big. Okay, we'll let you step down. All right, next, the internal audit monthly report. Kevin.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Had a little bit nicer weather this month to drive in.
Just a bit. So we're on tab 13 now.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
So before we move to that tab, I just want to give a brief status on what we're working on. We recently wrapped up an audit, at least our portion, the field work of a program we operate called Specialized Family Homes. We met with executive management on that at the beginning of the month. We're awaiting their management response. Once we get that, we will issue the audit report. And of course, y'all will get a copy of that report. And we will follow up with y'all in the next commission meeting following the issuance of that report. We are currently doing an audit of the procurement process here at DDSN. That includes not just your standard procurement process, but also looking at P cards and how P cards are used. We'll probably wrap up our field work in a couple of weeks on that. And then we are also looking at the client banking system. This was an audit at the request of management here. Client banking system is the banking system that we use for folks where we're the representative payee. The majority of those live in our regional centers, but we do have some folks that live in community ICFs where we're the rep payee. So we're also conducting an audit of that. And of course, y'all will get our audit reports as we complete those. Any questions about activity?
Your staff number again, Chairman, if I may, your staff, how many staff do you have? I forgot what you said a month ago, so if you.
That's myself and 5 auditors.
Okay, so you're staffed up to do the job that you feel needs to be done to help.
We are short a few FTEs that we have had in the past, like we're missing one is an admin, but I think we've sort of acclimated to not having that. And everybody in the division, to their credit, jumps in and assumes those duties. We don't have an audit manager position right now. That's vacant. That would be useful. And then we had another part-time auditor who reviewed the external audit reports and the agreed upon procedures. The division of those with the transference of those directives to finance, they're going to be handling the reviews of the financial audits, and we are looking at the agreed upon procedures. And we've just made changes and we're reviewing those in-house with the existing.
In your opinion, may I follow up here?
Yes.
I didn't mean to then this would be my last question to you.
Sure.
Because I'm super excited that we're going to be seeing you every month to make sure that we don't have a slip between the cup and the lip like the cost issue from previous years or anything like that. What I would be interested in especially is if areas that you're interested in that you feel deserve to be looked at, if you would kind of just give us general information about that. I mean, I want you, based on previous history, understand, and I think I speak for the group as a unit, we want you to tell us anything that's a problem out there, that is nothing could be worse than something blows up, you knew about it and didn't tell the commission, which we believe may have inadvertently happened in the past. So you're our eyes and ears in a way, along with, of course, Mary and staff, but I mean, she got the world to take care of, and it's sort of a different way of looking at it, but we're expecting you to be very aggressive by way of telling us, and, I mean, transparency is critical as far as I'm concerned. Not be ignorant, I don't mean that word like that, but we cannot be non-knowing of important things that are going on that you might have some information about. So if it means going into executive session or something that's a personnel, whatever, you got to be really, really transparent with us.
Absolutely.
And if we come up with things, we can throw things out individually and then bring them up if we need a vote or something like that. So I just want to thank you for the work you and your staff do. Very, very important to have that eyes and ears for us and for the executive director.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your support. And we will. As a matter of fact, one of the items we're going to be talking about is one of those risks that you just mentioned.
All right.
So moving on, I did.
Yeah, or are you still on your monthly report?
I am on, really, that was just sort of a synopsis of what
Okay.
we're doing, and we're getting ready to start the monthly report.
Got it.
So this is gonna be tab 13, and I just wanted to mention, I talked with Robin, and I shared discussions with Robin. Last month I mentioned about who audits the auditors, and that we do have to have an audit, we are members of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and by their professional standards, we have to have an external review every 5 years. That standard is in your tab. While they have many, many standards, the 1300 standard deals specifically with quality assurance and improvement programs for any audit function that is a member of the Institute. And just to touch on that, it requires internal and external assessments. Internal, like we have work paper reviews before we ever issue an audit. We have another auditor reviewing the work papers of the auditor who did the work to make sure any findings we have are supported in those work papers, that it's not hearsay or something we heard, that there's documentation to support that finding. External, which is what you have in your packet behind that, is, again, every 5 years, we are required to have an external review. There are two ways of doing that. You can have an external review come in, or you can do a controlled self-assessment, and then have that self-assessment validated by an external party. Over the years, we have done both here. The last one we did was in 17. It's in your packet. That particular year, we did do a controlled self-assessment review and had that validated. And the standard also says, once we do that, we have to report to the board, or to the commission in this case. We did that at the time we had that review, and I just wanted, and because we have some new commission members, wanted to bring that to your attention that we do follow those standards. Any questions about?
Now, let me clarify, you're saying that we have not had an external audit like of our IA since 2017, is that correct?
Correct, because it's every 5 years. So we will be due again here in a couple of years.
Which method are you using?
The last method was the control self-assessment with an external validator, and you have a copy of that in your packet. That is tab 13. Prior to that one, the one we had prior to that one was an external review team. And through the South Carolina Internal Auditors Association, they have a peer review process. So we had auditors in that particular review. We had 2 auditors from HHS, one of which was the audit director there, and the audit director at MUSC, and they came in and did our external.
What is the advantages and disadvantages of the 2 different types? And what would you say, apples to apples, give us a reason to use the one versus the other?
If I had my preference, I would prefer an external review team, because I want, especially like the team that we had come in last time, are familiar with the Medicaid system. Those auditors were familiar with the Medicaid system, so familiar with our operations. The reason we had to do it last year is, last year, but the last audit, the reason we went control self-assessment is we were going to do it through the State Auditors Association again, and they kept having a hard time getting peer review committee, and we had sort of passed our mark, and I was like, we're just going to have to, I prefer to do have an external assessment by an outside party, but we're just going to have to do this internally and have it validated because we needed to meet the time.
In order to get in that time frame and go ahead and make sure we're ready for that, at what point do we need to move forward and say, okay, we are ready for you to either do the self-assessment, or our plan is to do this, or our plan is to do that, so that we get in that queue and are able to get it done in the correct time frame?
We are constantly working on that because, like, for example, I just, with staff assistants, just finished a complete comprehensive review of our internal policies and procedures. The last 2 documents that we go in that to make that complete, the charter, which was internal office charter, which was passed today. And then when we get the issuance approval of the internal audit charter, that'll go in there. We're constantly looking at, the Institute has findings from peer reviews. We're pulling those down, looking at what those findings are, making sure that we don't have the same issues. If we do, then we're trying to address it. I would say typically, I'm starting that now. We're looking at about 2 years out before we have to. But we're looking at it now, about 12 months out, I'm really going to start hard and heavy and start trying to line up and get on the agenda with the association. if Chris continues to work his magic, I would really like the Institute of Internal Auditors themselves to come in and conduct the external review. That doesn't come free. There is a price tag associated with that.
Can you present us maybe next month with the cost as to what that would be? I would like for us to go ahead and get ourselves in line to do the kind of audit you feel that needs to be done here, so that we can feel comfortable about everything as a new board. I think most of us are fairly new since that last audit, and I think we would like to have someone outside look at this. And when you were ready, if you will let us know that you're ready for us to move forward with a motion to do so, give us your opinion, let us see what your options are, and obviously we'd like that information.
Absolutely. Now, I can tell you in 17, it was running about, and as Pat mentioned, the deficits that we were, and Barry made sure to document the deficits we were running. In 17, it was about $25,000 for them to do the but yes, I'll follow up and get those numbers and make sure that y'all get them.
That'd be great.
Thank you very much.
Anything that we need to know about 1312? Because I see the PCs there. Or are we good?
Let me just review it. No, I think we're good. Everything in there we have done. And again, that's what's included in your packet is the external assessment, the self-validation by the external party.
Any additional questions? All right, seeing no, we'll move on. Are you done with your report, Kevin? I apologize.
I am done with that section of the report.
Okay.
I do think I am up here 14, so I'll sort of do an introduction to that.
You are, so we'll move on to the next item for tab 14, the waiver process. Would be tag teaming Kevin and Susan.
Yes. All right, so this really sort of the background for this was the audit that we had done regarding that we did back in June regarding our waiver slot allocation. We reviewed that with y'all a couple months ago. And that's where management asked us to validate some waiver slot allocations. But I'm going to turn your attention, and Commissioner Thomas, this sort of addresses exactly what you were saying, to page 3. So page 3 has our review and our allocation, but that last paragraph in there that starts during the above analysis, we noticed a number of consumers in pending status for a slot in excess of 18 months. I discussed this with Pat when we were doing it. I'm like, Pat, this is a risk. We have to report it. Robin followed up with that to her credit and said, hey, Kevin, I can't get to that. When I click that link, it doesn't pull up that document. So we got that document to her. She started looking at it. And so she asked us to come back today and talk about the audit from not the slot allocation perspective, but from the time, the pending status. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. At the time of our review, and here's the beauty of internal audit, you get to go out and you find concerns and you bring those to the attention of management. And they get to work on fixing that. So with that said, I'll let Susan come up. So within that document, you see that our concerns about pending status. At that time period, I do want to say we ran a report yesterday. At the time that we conducted our audit, we had basically we had 987 slots in a pending status at the time we conducted our audit. This week, as of a couple days ago, we had 755. And we have that broken down in several time periods. But what I want to point out there is that overall, we've had a 23% decrease just since we issued that report. And I do think, to management's credit, they recognized that when it came out in the report, and they started making efforts to address that, which Susan can tell you in more depth what that is. But I will say what we started in our chart is we started tracking pending slots prior to January 1st, 17, and then every 6 months increments moving forward. Again, in running that analysis this week for that, we actually have in every 6 month period we have seen decreases in the number of people in pending slots, which is what you want to see. Meaning either we're getting them approved and we're getting them the slot, or we're getting a declination and we're getting them off the list so we can move somebody back on. We can take the next person. So I think management is doing a good job of recognizing this and moving on it. With that said, I can't tell you, I can just tell you the numbers. She can tell you particularly what they're doing to address that.
Sure, so I'll just kind of, Kevin, stay where you are, because we might do this together. We have been taking a proactive approach for more than, oh, I'm so sorry.
Make sure you're talking to her. Yeah,
Oh.
speak up. Thank you.
So we've been taking a proactive approach for more than just a few months, more than just a few years to work on this issue, because it has been identified as an issue since we got the additional funding for several fiscal years in a row. So we've been communicating with case managers about the urgency of when folks get allocated a slot, get on it, get moving, do everything you can to get a person into services. However, as you know, the case management system has undergone a lot of changes over the last few years. Waiver case management was ramping up. We were talking about conflict-free case management. Case manager turnover is actually pretty significant. So it is a key service, but it's also a service that's often in flux. So not only do these case managers have that kind of dynamic to deal with, but they're also dealing with an enrollment process that has many steps. So any process that has lots of steps, there is what? Potential for lags, potential for error. So our staff since probably May has been taking a more targeted approach with our case management work group to talk about this issue. It is on our agenda every month to talk about the need to continue working on the time pending. We meet with case management providers across the state. But we notified case managers that starting in August, a team of directors here at DDSN would manually be looking at these cases that were pending enrollment more than 6 months. 6 months is, we think, pretty fair as a rule of thumb for most cases to go through waiver enrollment. And so these directors are actually looking up specific cases. So as Kevin said, we're seeing a reduction in time pending, and we compared some data points this morning on this as well. In August, of the most at-risk group, so these cases that have been pending more than 6 months, they were pending an average of 706 days, and we reduced, we were able to, that was our beginning month, we resolved 5 cases of that long-standing subgroup. Then in September, the average pending went from 706 to 682. Well, you might think 30 days is not a big deal, but to a family it is. And so that was helpful, and we resolved another 76 cases, and we're still waiting on October numbers, but we're looking at pending going to 655. That's still a really long time when you think there are 365 days in a year. So this is definitely a pointed issue, one that we continue to work on. We're not only working on the tail end when there's a problem, but we're working on the prevention side as well. Through the last year and a half, we've increased our policies to give case managers some teeth to be able to say to families, if they're kind of on the fence about making a decision, we really need to move forward. You know, when we give you this much time to do something, of course, there are always exceptions. And there's a process for that as well. But we're trying to encourage our case managers to use those timelines. And to, another thing that we're also working on is working with Medicaid to look at their financial look-back process, which is a whole other work session, but really focuses on one of those lock-in steps that's necessary before a person can be enrolled in a waiver. They have to have the disability that's appropriate for the, for the waiver, but they also have to meet Medicaid financial eligibility and have a level of care. There's lots of technical work that has to be done. So we're refining that process as much as possible.
Chairman, if I could.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have a terrific interest in this subject matter. The very first meeting I had come to, I was asking questions about this very subject matter. So I am so happy that we've got focus on what is going on here. And I'm not going to like start asking questions about technicals. if you don't mind, I'm gonna give you a call and see if I can, more run through. And early on, I was talking with staff about this also.
Right.
Getting me more oriented, and it was part of the director's presentation. I think it was a couple of months ago, when she discussed, the general subject matter. But I think this is a right on target for what our real function is. And so I'll be calling you because I want to become very, very understanding of the nuances of what's going on here. So thank you for your work that you all are doing on this. Appreciate it very much.
Did you find one main cause for the delay? Or there were several?
Well, as with most answers at DDSN, it depends. There are lots of different factors that that determine why a case is pending so long. In some cases, it is error made by the case manager. We have to validate that as real. In other cases, the families are indecisive or uncooperative. In some cases, the families require more support to go through Medicaid eligibility process. In some cases, it's Medicaid staff. They're actually looking through the financial information. There are just many, many factors.
Okay.
We have analyzed the cases that have been pending longest and looked at them from a variety of angles. And there are a couple of providers that need a little bit more intensive technical assistance to kind of get through this issue, and we're providing that, not as a recommendation, but as a mandate.
Okay, so I do see that you are charting or plotting a corrective action.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I think I will say in the past, this is, sorry. Number one, I commend them because they're attacking this two ways. On the front end, trying to make sure as people approach, they're already in a ready status and we can move it quicker, and then addressing the pending on the back end. I do think with regard to the pending, in the past, there have been memos sent out and, hey, you need to address it, and sort of, things that you would expect from an oversight kind of agency. I think there has been a distinct change in the past few months regarding that to, it's not a memo, it's we are down in the weeds, we're making contact with the individual case managers, we're saying, hey, what do we need to move this? Do you need assistance from us? And we do at DDSN. So, I think the approach is there, we just need to make sure that we keep it at the forefront and keep working it.
I think a chart of some sort, like what Chris to the commission, would help us tremendously.
I just have a question on the memo from March 27, 2019, from you, Susan. Has a paragraph in it that says, currently 1,418 individuals have a waiver slot in the enrollment in IDRD and CS waiver. So that number, 1,419, is different from, well, no, not that number. The next sentence says the average days pending is 255 days. And there was just mention of 706 days, 682 days. So what's the difference? What am I comparing apples to apples?
Sure. So when we talk about time pending, we're basically breaking it down. So from the point of slot allocation to the point that a person's actually enrolled in the waiver and pending status. So we've taken a pending timeline average, and the numbers I was citing about our progress on cleanup is just the most elongated cases. So of the subset of pending, we're taking the ones that have been pending more than 6 months, and that's, those were the stats about those. So in our current report, our average days pending for the whole group of pending for community supports waivers, 363 days. For intellectual disability related disabilities waiver, again, the whole group is 444 days. And for head and spinal cord injury, it's 222. So that's just the period that's pending for all three waivers in total. That makes sense.
Yeah, so slot allocation and enrollment is different.
So, okay, so a person is typically waiting for a DDSN waiver service. Okay, so they're on a waiting list. And then they enter a stage where they're preparing to get a slot, and then eventually a slot is allocated to them in their name. So that's when I know we've always go through all these terms, but that's when all the work gets done to prep them to be receiving services on their enrollment. So they're waiting to get a slot, then they have a slot and they're in pending status doing waiver enrollment,
Right.
then they get enrolled. So what I was talking about with these timelines is not how long they waited to get a slot. I'm talking about between the slot and actually getting enrolled to get a service.
Is it true, Susan, that people can actually get a slot allocated to them and they're not even Medicaid eligible yet?
Yes.
So you see, then you have to go through the whole Medicaid eligibility process, which could take a year.
Yes,
Well,
so we're working.
See, okay, I thank you for that, because and I'm sure I've read this somewhere, but that was the first thing you had to be Medicaid eligible before the slot. So thank you for straightening me out on that. That helps a lot to understand why there could be a delay.
You have to be eligible to get services, but you don't have to be eligible to get a slot.
Because your slot's not ready yet. It might take 5 years to get a slot or 3 years to get a slot. So and a lot can happen.
You can get the slot before the Medicaid comes in.
Right, and then some people are not financially eligible for Medicaid until they have a waiver slot.
Okay.
The waiver slot has different eligibility requirements for Medicaid. Once you're going to be in a waiver, the income amount is different. So some people might not, and this is true especially with HASC, that folks might not be financially eligible for Medicaid, so they don't have Medicaid going in. But if they got a waiver slot allocation, they would actually be eligible for Medicaid. So it's done on the back end.
They become eligible once they're enrolled in the waiver,
Once
which
they're
is
enrolled
even
in
more
the-
complicated to
It's
think
very,
about.
very complicated.
But yes, you could be on a DDSN waiting list and not have a DDSN-oriented disability. You could be determined ineligible. You could not be Medicaid eligible.
That's right.
There are lots of those things. So that's why we're going about 500 people down on each waiting list right now. And we're trying to clean up those issues before they get to the point of getting a slot. It's kind of like creates like a pre-work, like a processing kind of period. Because if we can get them through those steps and figure out their path before they get a slot, then we're not giving slots to people who are not going to be able to use them, as well as queuing people up. So once they do get a slot, their case manager's work is much swifter.
Right. So it's not so much about the providers being ready to take these folks, right? Or is it?
Well,
sometimes
we have in the, I mean,
that's the thing that's really hard to get your head around.
Yeah.
As a commissioner.
Yeah.
With this issue, because with everything, like y'all always say, there's tons of layers, tons of issues, there's tons of, so anyway.
Well, I would like to be really supportive of case managers because they do have difficult jobs. But we have asked case management providers that if their case managers do not have the ability to really focus on waiver enrollment activities, that they not accept the person for case management, because they really do need to make it a priority. They're very engaged in their current caseload. So you can imagine onboarding somebody, getting them enrolled in a waiver might not take the highest priority, but that is the reason we're here to provide services. So it's okay for them to say they don't have time to do it and let another provider who does take that on.
Is that billable? Can the case manager bill for that?
So that's another,
fee for that.
that's another little
You
bit,
pay a
it
fee,
depends, but
right.
they're paid a completion fee, whether it turns into an enrollment or if it turns into a declination.
Right, and we had to
Yes.
subsidize that somewhat.
Yes.
I mean, that's another one that if, again, going to the free market theory, that if we can somehow long-term look at people be more willing to take that job on if there's a direct relationship between I do the work, I get the money.
Right.
There's an element to that as well.
Yeah.
And they get to keep the customer.
Yep.
That's the big deal. Yeah.
That's the built-in reinforcement is once they're enrolled, you provide ongoing waiver case management.
Right.
So using my cotton theory, what you're doing is removing all of the weeds from the cotton so that when time to harvest it, it's ready to go.
Yes, sure, yes.
Yes, definitely. In regard to this, with looking at the 500 down, so, and again, with looking at the 500 that are coming up, we're eating away on the front end of this list. By having, Susan has staff that are looking at this pending, these folks have been in pending status that are now down in the weeds, contacting these case managers and saying, hey, what are you doing? What do we need to do? And we're eating away at the back end of this list. So theoretically, that list is gone.
Yeah, and we're finding out, do you want to slot or not? I mean,
Yeah.
you do, you don't, you don't.
And if you've had it for a period of time and you're not doing anything with it, do you really still want it? And some
Right.
people do indicate they need a decline.
Right.
Love it.
Okay. Other questions about this?
Any questions about internal audit? Thank y'all.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Safe travels, everybody.
All righty. Wonderful. That ends our old business section. Moving on to new business. Chris, you're back up. Tab 15. Financial update.
All right. So, again, I'll call your attention to a couple of things in regards to this in your packet. First thing I'd like to continue to reiterate is that since we did not have an adopted spending plan at this point, which is on the agenda after this to discuss the spending plan, we are reporting our authorization, what we're allowed to spend if we could maximize Medicaid. So back to go full circle back to Commissioner Thomas's example. If we got $9 million of state funds in the game and it spent $100, that's what I call high octane dollars. You're spending $1 and getting $1 service. If we can start leveraging these state dollars at a higher level, we will start getting more into our authorization limit. So for example, we are authorized to spend $805 million. If you look at under adjusted budget, that really is authorization because the spending plan line is 0 right now. We have $56 million of unused authorization because we are inefficient at leveraging state dollars, okay? So as we get better and better at matching, we'll get closer and closer to our authorization. But at this point, the state gives us $270 million approximately, and they say, go out and do what you can with it and leverage it to max. And we're just not really good at that. We're getting a lot better. So that's part of the point I was making earlier with Bruce's team and Pat and Mary and everybody working on this as a team. We're getting better and better at doing that. So next month, if you pass the spending plan, it will be our budget, not our authorization. So if you look at how we're doing against our authorization, it's really misleading because if we tried to spend at our authorization level, we'd be bankrupt. Okay, we don't have $56 million extra a year to spend. So we've got to spend to our spending plan. But all we have is authorization. So $179 million is what we've spent through the first quarter. Compared to our authorization, we're 1.68% below that level, but there are some distorting things in that $169 million that I need to continue to report to you each month. We pay our providers a half month in advance throughout the year, and it catches up in June. In June, they only get one payment. July, they get 3. So in the $179 million is $16.5 million we pay to our providers that are paid in advance that cause a matching problem. If you back that out and then compare to our actual proposed spending plan, we're at 12.88% surplus right now. So we're doing really, and I know that's a lot of numbers. But in other words, if I right size everything and throw the spending plan in here, we're doing very, very well. You know, if I'm comparing to the authorization and I'm doing well, that could be a false sense of security. So once we adjust that, that's where we end up. So we're doing really, really well for this fiscal year thus far, and we just need to continue to be diligent in regards to managing our expenditures.
Any questions regarding the financial update? Would then entertain a motion to approve the update as presented.
Second.
Commissioners Thomas and Miller. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So That is accepted as presented. Moving on to the next item, going to tab 16, the spending plan.
In addition to the handout I just brought around, I just realized the capital budget didn't make it into the plan, into the tabs, and that's my fault. I failed to provide that to folks putting these together. So the Finance Committee did look at the capital budget. I did not have the spending plan to present to the Finance and Audit Committee earlier this week because we were still hammering away on it. The capital budget they did look at, so when we get around to that, just know that we did discuss that in committee. So from a spending plan perspective, one thing we continue to try and make advancements here and increase our level of precision and usefulness of information that we're putting out. One thing that I'll state is that last year we only did an operating budget. You really need a capital budget as well, which is part of your operating budget. So in other words, if I'm out here just budgeting for people, staff, and supplies and materials, but I'm over here with all this capital need, how do I see that if it's not in my operating budget or if I don't know that it's out there? So nestled inside the spending plan is our capital budget funding. If you look at page page 5 of 5, under other miscellaneous contracts and items, you will see $7,313,000 budgeted, which ties to the capital budget that I just provided to you. And so I'm going to discuss the spending plan, but nestled inside this is the capital budget that we need to discuss as well. Another improvement we made this year is comparative numbers. Last year I couldn't do comparatives because of the prior budget process I didn't follow because it confused me and I didn't quite understand what I was even doing. So I threw that all out and started over with my own process, and so I had no comparatives. So this year we've got fiscal year 20 nestled right up with 21 with variances and explanations of those variances. You will see that last year we projected to have about $1.3 million left over, and we said that we were hitting around 2 or 3, we thought, prior to COVID. So we're pretty good on the number. There are some hokey things within there that I didn't do exactly correctly, but they're kind of wash transactions. So in other words, I made the mistake on the revenue and expenditure side and didn't look at that exactly right because I was just learning and really didn't understand how the state plan services work here. So now that I've got a better understanding, we address that, and that's part of the reason our expenditures are so wonky or different this year, but I'll hit that separately. You'll note that we're projecting a $33 million surplus for the year. Now, keep in mind, well, not keep in mind, be aware that within that number, we roll forward funds from prior year. So when you look in your revenues, because the way we budget here, we say those funds are available and they're in our revenue number. So if you look at page 2 of 5, you'll see you go about midway down the big $12 million number. That's actually last year's leftover cash. And if you look across, you'll see it was $149,000 the year before, which is not exactly 157 that we've been saying because there's some timing issues there that we could discuss. But anyway, it's not that big of a number. But you can see the difference there in the carry forwards that we were able to have. So in your revenue is that number, which is why I'm backing it out. So you can see a true surplus here on the first page. Also, we have CARES Act funds that we're projecting getting. Again, if you recall, you all approved us accepting those funds as long as I could reach a level of comfort that we weren't double dipping in any way. Right now, we've gone through the application process because we can turn these funds back in if we don't get them, and we had a very tight time frame to ask for these funds. We've asked for about $2 million thus far and been awarded, I think about 2,000 is all at this point. So we are continuing to work on this. It's taken a lot of staff time to work on this CARES Act.
You think 2,000?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Who gets all that money?
I have no idea.
Wipes.
They just keep asking for more and more documentation. Like we sent them, we sent them payroll registers. They want to see payroll checks, actual check. direct deposit notification. You know, it's that kind of tediousness that the state hired an outside company to do this on their behalf, and that's who we're working with, not the actual state. So
this is a Fed stuff, right?
this is federal funds that the state got. They received. Remember, Mr. Miller, we talked about this, and we went through and said, well, this much is going to telecommunications, this much, I think it was like 197 million left for providers, us, to get and so the submission thus far is for June 30 back. They only allowed us to submit fund requests through June 30. So these are all prior year monies, which is why I have that done that way. We are in the process now of the next phase where they've opened up through October 31st, maybe, or September 30. Anyways, they've opened up a second round. And so we've got staff right now working on submission of that paperwork, and we have no clue how much, that's going to be. So the reason those are adjusted out is because they're distorting. So we're really looking at about an $18 million, if you want to get real about it, $18 million surplus. And I will say the reason that's being generated like that is a host of reasons, but primarily the enhanced FMAP that we are able to get. That allows us to basically replenish our state appropriation, if you will. In other words, if we had to spend $271 million, but now we don't have to use all that for match, it basically restores our funds available in state funds is the way that works. So we have factored in the public health emergency is through January 23rd, I think is the right date. Enhanced FMAP continues through the end of the quarter in which the public health emergency ends. And so currently we're expecting it to end March 31st. So we have done what's called a composite FMAP rate in these numbers, which is 75% of the enhanced number and 25% of the normal rate if we go back to the normal rate in April. A couple other things I will note is we're under a continuing resolution right now. We don't know if we're going to get any change in state appropriation. I don't think we'll have a cut. We might get a little bit of extra possibly, but I'm not holding my breath. What I will say is if once that budget has been adopted or they say, no, we're not adopting a budget, we're going to stay under a CR all year, we will modify this budget.
CR is continuing
resolution.
Yep. And that means
carryover funds from prior year with no changes.
And it stays the same. So that's a continuing resolution. Okay.
So you know that you've got, I think the Senate wants to adopt the budget, but the House and Governor doesn't. So, I don't know how they're going to work that out. That point, so if we do receive additional funding or we have a funding reduction, we will have to come back through this process, and true this up. Let's see. The other thing I would state is we didn't have any direct care increase this year, the $1, but last year's numbers, because when we were doing this, we didn't actually have final dollars. We had to estimate the direct care. So as you look through these numbers and you're trying to understand why they're up so high, if you look at, for example, if you look at, again, page 5 of 5, if you look at fiscal year 2020, there was $34 million we were projecting to pay out to direct care staff, either through provider contracts or at our regional centers. And so all that money is now in those line items. That's zero for this year because now it's in all the different contracts and in the regional center budget. So those are the main things I wanted to mention here. Is there anything else to discuss? We wanted to highlight this.
You did a great job. I think there'll be a lot of questions.
Chris, is this informational based?
No, sir. This is our budget that we're requesting approval for so that we can use it as our operating base for this year.
Okay, well, you certainly included would be the capital fund too, capital expenditures.
Yes, sir. We can tackle that now if you'd like to do them together.
Well, Chairman, all right, so we've got a budget, you got a capital budget.
Which is,
If we're gonna hear that, then I guess don't we need to hear from, Commissioner, Blackwood about,
Yeah, because the finance committee did go through that.
Right, we looked at the capital, yeah.
And did you guys,
The capital.
okay,
Mhm.
right,
Just-
right. So, yeah, we can, yes, since the finance committee's already done that,
Yeah.
you ought to be our,
we table this until we finish ours?
the spending plan?
Yes, until we.
I think they're under the same tab, so I think we're still, I think we're fine for
Okay,
discussing both, and then we can talk about how we can,
okay.
when a motion is made, we can deal with how the motion goes. But I don't think we need to table anything, I think we're still in
That's
discussion.
fine. Okay.
So, are you ready for us to go
Well-
to capitated to discuss that?
Capital budget,
Capital budget.
the point I would like to make here, if you will look at the handout that I've brought around, this is just a plan. We have to come back through you for approval for the vast majority of these expenditures are over our spending threshold. So you are going to be aware of every one of these decisions as we go through. So it's merely asking you to agree that, yes, we can put some funds aside and we agree that these are things we want to consider. For example, if you look under infrastructure VDI, $500,000, Mike Mickey is in the back of the room, he's getting ready to present that to you in a little bit, because we want you to consider approving that. When we get ready to buy vehicles, we have, I'm using round numbers, so don't quote me on these, but say 120 vehicles, and I think 15 or 20 of them are under 10 years old. So we have really, really old fleet, and it's a problem. And so we're projecting purchasing 30 vehicles this year, which we're still working on what those are going to be and what we need. Preliminary indication is we're going to need about 1.1 million of that 1.5, but I like to be conservative. I estimate high on expenses and low on revenues. That's accountant's nature. So I'm going high on everything on the expense side, hoping we spend less. Under the facility CPIP, we have to submit a 5-year construction, what's it called? Construction Permanent Improvement Plan or Capital Permanent Improvement Plan. That CPIP goes through the state office, JBRC, Joint Bond Review Commission. There's a lot that has to be done before we spend this 3.8, but if you look at the very bottom of the sheet I sent you or gave you, this is what was turned in for our plan. And what I will tell you is that the renovation to the dorm for 300,000 and some of these other projects, we're going to actually revisit whether we want to do those now or not. I think Mary's mentioned to you before that a lot of our dorms need a lot of work. And so it kind of bothers me, and I know it bothers her too. We don't want to spend money doing something that doesn't impact consumers living. This is an potential HR office, as I understand it at this point. I'm not positive, but that's how it's documented. We don't need to be spending money on administrative spaces when we have, facilities that need things. So, current management.
Did finance look at each of the items and get information on each of the items or what?
No, sir. This is what previous management had for year 2 in their 5-year plan. What I'm telling you is before we bring you a revised plan for this year, it's not going to look like this. We're going to reset, we're going to reprioritize things. So as I stated earlier, none of this can get done.
So how does that work? So what are we approving if this is not what we're
earmarking dollars for?
Why don't you just have a lump sum? And that lump sum is what you work with, because the committee's going to have to relook it, right, at where each of the requests are coming from. I'd rather them do the work than me spend 3 hours asking questions about individual items, like what is an electric grid for $1.2 million? What's all that?
We have 2 of them actually that we have to replace. They're very antiquated. They're what? How many years old? 50 or something? Rufus, do you know more about those?
They're beyond their life.
We can't even find compatible things to run on them anymore, and they're atrophied. And we own our own water systems on some of these, our own paving, our own roads, our own energy grids. So we're working with Dominion Energy to come in and renovate these electrical grids.
After replace it, they're so old, Dominion won't even do repairs on it because they don't make the parts anymore.
Transformers and all that. So we've got 2 of them. This is only one of them. We got another one that's about 1.3 million that's in year 3 sitting out there. So the issue with the lump sum is I could see you saying, what in the world, how are we spending the 7.3 million, Mr. Clark?
So this basically, right, but what you're saying is this is not gonna be, what is this, a sampling or something then?
It's a plan, and every time we take a step down this path, you are gonna have to get involved, or the finance committee, in these spending decisions. The best projection I can make of
The
what we
money
need to do
coming
this
to
year.
pay for this, for the capital plan, that's basically a bond. Is this the treasurer's money, or where's this?
State appropriations, that is a hanging debate that we need to have. If you'll look in the middle of this tab, of this page, we're proposing that we start financing some of this, but I know some commissioners are against that. We have not made that decision yet. So what I've done, we can't finance everything through the master lease program, but 1.8 million of these things could be. But I'm not assuming in this budget that we're gonna have any financing sources. So if you look under the revenues, I haven't projected any financing sources. So this is strictly coming out of state appropriations at this point.
State, not out of our budget, but state.
Our state appropriations.
Our state appropriations, not something.
There's no outside funding for this anywhere. And that's why we're in such a bad spot, because as Pat mentioned, we were $10+ million down on an annual basis, like just 2 or 3 years ago. So there was no cash to do these things, so you just had to ignore them.
A lot of delayed maintenance.
And pray that nothing else breaks, you know?
Well, one of the albatrosses of, when you're dealing in a cash strapped situation is to pull money to fund for maintenance.
I agree.
So maybe what we're experiencing here, Pat's shaking his head already, you know what I'm gonna say. All right, it is, you get in trouble, and where's the money come from? You can pull it from maintenance, and that covers you for a little while, but then 5, 10, 12 years later, you got a real problem because nothing's been put into maintaining the whatever. And I'm trying to get my, okay for all that, but I'm trying to get my hands on the right procedure for when it goes to committee, because so what you're saying is when we vote, Chris, what are we voting on exactly?
That out of our appropriations this year, you agree with allocating 7.3 million for capital projects, but as these projects, and that's how I came up with the 7.3.
Then we have to approve those.
Each time we do something.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we spend those, you're gonna have to get involved because of the dollar size of them.
Well, like, I've got no problem as long as God bless you, bring cookies. So I've got no problem with that as long as we have the money. So, you know, I mean, it ultimately comes out. Now, I was praising you all a little while ago that we were cash strapped 6 or 8 months ago, and you all had been doing things as a staff to try to find sources which gave us the wherewithal to do other things during COVID. Now, I guess my question is, yes, I guess I could vote for this as long as somehow, I mean, the money is really, really there and it's not going to impact other things. So I mean, I don't want to call it a wish list, but Chairman,
Spending
I
plan
don't.
is what it's called, right? Spending
Right.
plan,
That's, yeah,
plan.
plan.
And we have to vote on every.
I have a plan like that at my household account, but Kim won't let me spend the money like I really want to do, so maybe it's just
As we
pie in
start,
the sky.
as we start tackling these, we're gonna be pressure testing our fiscal situation.
I think that's a good segue to.
I was gonna say, and if we get to fee for service, shouldn't that help our reserves a little? I mean, shouldn't that,
Not initially, because we gotta take that money. That's part of the options you're gonna have to vote on.
Okay.
An option is to take all the money out of the system and just keep it, but I can tell you that's gonna cause a lot of harm in the provider network. So that's one of those options y'all are going to vote on.
okay, well, just trying.
You know, we got,
That will help us.
a system and we're getting ready to reach in it and just grab a small piece out of it. You know, it's like a Jenga, you know, just reaching in there and grabbing a little piece out, so. Why are you shaking your
If we
head?
truly
You didn't like the Jenga analogy?
I mean, if we truly went to fee for service, we would save $100 and some thousand a day, according to what, $146,000 a day, according to what we were talking about last month. So I mean, there should be some savings in there somewhere to put toward this, is what I'm saying.
So with regard to the capital expenditures,
Yeah,
Finance Committee
we approved what was submitted.
okay. So coming out of Finance Committee, at least with regard to the capital expenditures, we have
Just the capital spend is.
just the capital expenditures. We have essentially a motion and a second to approve it as presented, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody want to make any additional motions on this particular agenda item at this time?
The motion needs to include that the specifics will come back to the commission for specific votes.
Correct.
I want to make sure we're clear on that.
Correct. I mean, it's an approval of a spending plan, not of actually spending the money.
Yeah, and on the record, it would say that the devil's in the details of all these plans, so that's the point.
Right. Yes, that's correct.
But each
It's a plan, not
item, because it's over $200,000, would have to be approved by this
Well-
commission, which is a standard operating
Correct.
practice.
So Kronos, for example, it is not under 200, but it is a long-term contract commitment, thus it is over 200. It wouldn't be that much for 1 year, but because we're entering into potentially a 3, 4, 5-year agreement, you have to aggregate all that, and it then comes over 200.
Chairman, I want to make sure then, as we vote, we're clear, we're not approving the individual items.
Correct. We are approving a spending plan.
Okay, despite the fact that we've got individual items listed.
Correct.
That's not an vote for the expenditure.
Correct.
I'd like that to go into the minutes, please.
I was gonna say,
There's no-
according to the Freedom of Information Act, could we put what he just said in the minutes, please?
Yes. It should be on the recording. If you want to say it again a little bit louder, David, just to make sure it got there.
Yes, as part of the motion for acceptance, that we're about to vote on is a spending plan, and does not include permission, acceptance, or a approval vote of the individual items that are listed on this sheet of paper that is in front of us called capital expenditures.
Second by Commissioner Rollinson.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
I think it won't hurt to have a second, so, okay. And so we'll let the minutes reflect that. Do we want to make any other motions at this time regarding anything else on this agenda item, specifically the non-capital expenditure spending? Anybody have any questions about that? If not, would entertain a motion to approve that as well.
So moved.
Okay, we have a second with regard to spending plan.
Second.
Mr. Rollins, seconds. Any further questions about that part?
Let me just state for the record that it's 12:38 and that's when somebody needs to, and we started at whatever time we started, so that's when somebody needs to look at this tape to see exactly what they need to type down. So
Thank
you don't have to come back to this and say, wait a minute, y'all didn't put down what we said, what David said verbatim.
Thank you.
We've been through that over and over and over again. I hope we won't with the new person secretary that we have now.
Thank you.
But it's 12:38 and we need to look at the tape at that particular time and write and type what he said verbatim, please.
Yes, she is here. She's indicating she's made that notation. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, Commissioner Miller, do you have any objection to your motion that we have one vote on the both pending motions that include yours?
None whatsoever.
Okay, so with regard to those two motions, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Does anybody need to differentiate between the two motions? Just make sure. Okay. Hearing none, then that spending plan, including the capital expenditures with the stipulations as outlined by David, are approved. Okay. Thank you. All right. So the next item on the agenda is the VDI computer project. Okay. Did the committee vote on that?
We didn't vote on it, but
Okay.
we had a presentation on it.
Got it. Okay.
So I have Michael Mickey here. He's our Chief Information Officer. Michael's been a breath of fresh air. He brings a lot of industry experience and healthcare background from the hospital systems in Louisiana, Florida, and here in South Carolina. Bringing a lot of really rigor to what we do and trying to review our practices, including security. So he's working really closely with Kareem Briggs, our security officer, and Michael works for me. So he's come with this great idea that I think is really a no-brainer, but I realize not everyone in this room may get to that level of comfort with it. But I've asked him to come and present this proposed solution. Do you want us to wait for you to get back, Mr. Commissioner Thomas?
Proceed.
Because we're going to need a motion on this one. This is actually spending.
So moved.
We'll make
You rolling that? You got Thomas?
And I absolutely don't want to cut you off, and I appreciate you being here. Again, we are running.
Sure.
I know that we had an extensive presentation about this to the finance. I don't necessarily know we need to do the entirety of that again. Was there anybody who didn't hear, you didn't hear that?
Oh, no, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, he was.
Right, so, and I think you were,
You were on the
so, at least the 5 commissioners who are there, we'll just make, David had to step out to go to the restroom, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So I think we've, everybody who's in the room right now heard that presentation. So I don't feel like you need to restate the entirety of that presentation. Just to sort of cut down on time. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yeah, but we probably should wait, since David was the only person who didn't hear any of it ever.
If he wants to say something.
So,
But it does need to be an abridged version because it's
Yeah.
12:38.
Give us a quick one. Give us the 2-minute version as opposed to the extended version.
Back? You want to wait or you want to?
Well, we need to wait till he gets back to give us a 2 or 3 minute version.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. If he chose to step out, if he feels like he needs to abstain or whatever.
He would have.
He can. We still have a quorum here. We are gonna keep on going. That's the standard practice that we always have whenever anybody steps out. So if somebody, we're gonna keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, that's standard practice.
Go ahead.
Well, I appreciate the time you guys have given me, and again, as Chris said, we are excited about this opportunity. We think it's going to bring some significant benefits to our security posture here at the agency. Looking at our administrative overhead and IT, we're very excited about this opportunity as well. There's some security benefits that I didn't talk about in the last meeting, I'll briefly touch on. That's probably the biggest benefit, having the data center alleviates the 700 entry points in the form of removing the computers from the agency. Right now, we don't think that we have some of the physical security best practices employed at our regional offices, and this technology will help ensure that by keeping that image in the data center. Now we can focus our efforts from securing those 700 computers to securing a single image that's housed in our physically secure data center. Something I didn't touch on at the meeting as well was user experience. There's tremendous benefits to the user experience of having a single image. IT ensures that each time an employee logs on, they get a desktop that's working as intended each time. I don't know how many of you guys use your computer, turn it on, and Office does something really quirky that it didn't do yesterday, and you got to figure it out, you got to call IT. With the single image, that's no longer. We're very excited about that. The way the technology works, it ensures image works every time, and when they log off, it destroys that image and recreates it. So you can imagine the benefits of that. It ensures that they get a speedy, a snappy, and a functioning desktop each time they log on, which can result in increased productivity and reduction in our IT administrative overhead. I want to clarify something from the last meeting. I used the word reallocation of staff. Our staff has been really great through this whole COVID workforce experience, and we have about 9 staff that focus primarily on taking care of the end users. And they answer help desk calls and fill urgent requests and last minute requests and fires throughout the day, and they do a really good job of that. One of the things that this technology will also allow us to do is give us an opportunity to refocus on some of the things that we haven't had a chance to focus on over the last few years. So, such as improving our telephone systems, potentially moving towards telehealth, focusing on AV and things like that. So conference rooms and audio and visual, researching technology and how to best fit the organization. So we don't think that for a second our folks will be without any tasks. We'll be able to refocus some of their energies toward things that benefit the agency. So I hope that was an abbreviated version. I definitely want to allow for any questions you guys may have.
Can you show them the device real quick?
Sure.
Talk about-
We talked about the endpoint in the last meeting. It looks and feels just like a monitor, with the exception there's a network connection in the device. Has all the peripheral inputs and outputs, but it connects to the network. There's no moving parts, no hard drive, no memory within this thing, but it looks and feels just like a Windows computer. But the desktop and the operating system resides in the data center. So
We're buying those instead of computers.
these cost $200. Our computers cost $1,500. So there's a tremendous, there's a capital outlay, of course, up front, but over the next years, we're going to realize some savings pretty quickly.
Where will we be storing the data? And where will the cloud be?
Sure, the cloud would be in our data center here, and we have a redundant system that we're building. Initially, we're going to build 2 systems here. One, they'll both be housed here until we complete the implementation, and then we're going to stretch that over to DOA's data center for redundancy. So in case we have a problem here, our remote offices can still access the system over at DOA's data center. So we'll split the configuration between the two, but it'll still be our private cloud.
So I'm interested in a tour of the server room. It's free to do it. It's as big as this room. You want to go in and look at it.
So if a commission.
Is you on your wiring? Is your wiring
The
neat?
wiring is horrible, and I have that on the to-do list, so somebody who's not here yet.
So if a commissioner is at home and for security purposes, and we had one of those, we could actually come into the cloud system and be secure?
So you don't necessarily need one of these at home to get into the cloud system. You would go to a web address that we're going to create. It'll be something like connect.ddsn.sc.gov. You'll go there and have a login page. You put your username and your password, and then you'll see a Windows desktop open. You can do it at Aunt Sally's computer in Michigan. I mean, anywhere in the world, you have a device on your iPad, iPhones, Android, you'll be able to access the cloud.
And no data leaves our data center in that model. It stays
within the data center. So our efforts right now is toward protecting ourselves against our users from clicking links and downloading stuff to their computer. Right now, with a centralized image, we have control of it. If in the event that a user clicks on something in the cloud and infects that device, they simply log off. It destroys the image and recreates it during the logon process. So it's a very efficient way to combat against threats that both Kareem and I are facing.
This is the great-great-grandson of the old dumb terminals that we used to use back in the 70s.
And we use that term a lot.
Yeah.
We're going backwards.
Yeah.
But the dumb term, the green screen, you remember that? Everything talked to the data center?
Yep.
We're actually going back there.
Yeah.
So when somebody breaks into the system someday and wants to hold it ransom, in exchange for, $1 million or something like that, we hear about all the time from very high up entities. This is going to help us with that kind of threat?
It'll help us with that threat, but it won't alleviate the threat, because ransomware attacks both PCs and servers. So we do have servers in the data center that's outside of this cloud architect that houses files. So if Chris is on his laptop and he clicks a link and that link is sent to our file server, it can lock that file server out. Both Kareem and I Kareem mainly, put in layers to protect us from that. But I just want to be transparent. This only protects us from that type of threat from a PC perspective. Locking out PCs, locking out an entire agency's PCs, all right? But there's still the threat of a file server that we have layers to protect against that.
Well, wouldn't it be the fact that it's being multiple stored, information is multiple stored, wouldn't that protect us? Or why wouldn't that protect us? Let me put it that way.
So when
from malware,
sure.
from somebody, hey, I'm going to destroy all this information about your client base. Right. Yeah, but it's like, nope, you're not either, because we have it also stored over there and you hadn't been able to touch that. So we're cutting you off and we're going to reload with the,
Right. So when you're logged into this desktop here and you go and click on My Documents, you're actually talking to another server. All right, your OneDrive, your file servers, and data that's on here is actually a link to another system, right? But to your point, in this implementation, we are taking care of file servers, meaning that they're going to be housed in this system, but they still have the ability to be, they still have that exposure. Now, we have safeguards to prevent from that. We're not 100% on anything when it comes to security. people are creating viruses and ransomware as we sit in this room. But we're adding layers to our security posture to minimize the potential. And we're going to continue to do that as well. But when it comes to these desktops and things like that, it removes the ability for a desktop to be locked out. Yeah. And the 700 that we have, because there are ransomware threats out there that just attack the PC environment, right? And not the server environment. So we're taking care of that with this. And in addition to the servers, both Korea and I have different technologies that we've layered across our servers to reduce that threat.
What backups do we have?
Sure. So all of our systems, mainly all of our file servers, we're actually transitioning away from file servers. We can just work through some of the financial team's needs. We're going to be moving more towards SharePoint and OneDrive, which is in Microsoft's cloud. And they have multiple data centers in different places, and they're probably one of the most secure when it comes to security against threats. And to your point, that's a layer of security that was implemented prior to me. That's probably one of the best moves that you can make as an IT guy, is get everything into one of those public clouds, because they're less likely to be attacked, right? There's very rarely you hear Microsoft is totally down because somebody impacted them. It's usually the small shops, the small organizations that don't have the resources to go to the cloud, and they get locked out. And there are large organizations, UHS was one just recently, where their entire EMR was locked out because of something someone did internally. So to counter the threat, a lot of it has to do with user education. 80% of the things that happen in environments comes with user education. And that's how you prevent a lot of those threats. Clicking on links, responding to emails, opening web pages, putting your information in it. That's how all that really starts. And Kareem has done a really good job in that area, and we're going to continue to expound on user education.
Other questions about the proposed project?
This is in the capital budget. This is an example of us coming before you to spend some of that 7.3.
Put it at the top of the list.
How much of that 7.3?
Really quick, can you just summarize the savings on the servers real quick too? I mean, just 1 minute or less.
So we have some servers in the data center that currently run a Microsoft product, and we have about 30 to 40 servers throughout the environment that are needing to be replaced within the next year or so. And that investment would cost about $300,000+ if we didn't do this today. If we do go with this investment, that would also take care of the server environment as well. So that would alleviate that capital outlay.
So while the project is 500,000, there's some netting out that lowers that number down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we did
a $1.5 million savings over the life of 5 years, which includes staff productivity. Without staff productivity, it's 500,000.
Right.
Other questions?
How you like South Carolina?
It's slow, but I'm starting to enjoy it.
It's got some advantages.
We don't have all the tornadoes that y'all have.
Hurricanes. If I can ever go fishing, I may start liking it a little better.
Let's do it.
I'm never going back through Shreveport, Louisiana.
Don't do it.
I want to hear this.
I had to go there to get to San Antonio.
All right. Would then entertain a motion to approve the VDI computer project.
I already made that motion, Chairman.
Oh, did you? I'm sorry.
Yes, I did.
I did not see that. Motion. Second for Miller. I apologize, Commissioner. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved.
Thank you for your support.
My wife's in IT. I was going to tell my wife's in IT. If she hears about a server room with that, she's going to come after me. She's all about that.
That is on state contract.
Have we already sent that bid out?
It's on state contract. You don't have to bid it. It's on state contract. And the state's already approved this project. They're very involved in this. I didn't state that he did in the finance committee.
Okay. When do we anticipate having this system up and running?
He'll probably be putting a PO on my desk this afternoon, I'm sure.
I think the implementation will probably start in early December, and probably finish the entire, probably late summer, when we finish with the entire project.
Sorry.
No, you're,
I know it's a late.
let's have a
Good job. I look forward to talking.
Listen, we're doing it.
You
We
did
got
great.
stuff to do.
Well-
All right, we're gonna go on to the next item, which is the HHS administrative contract update. Chris?
Just to keep you guys abreast of what's going on there, I know this is one of those things that's been hanging out there. We keep tackling these skeletons in the closet that we inherited when we got here, and the admin contract is another one of those. Our team has been working really hard to get the administrative contract in place. Really, this is two pieces. We've got a going back admin contract that really doesn't mean much of anything. It's kind of covering HHS as CMS comes in because they expect it to exist, and then a go forward admin contract. So I'm gonna focus mainly on the go forward, but in regards to the one that we're working on for the last 5 years, 14 through 20 is what that covers. We are, basically you're signing a contract after the time period's over, so it's kind of hokey. And a lot of stuff in there we didn't actually do and we won't be doing, and HHS understands that. So Mary has asked for them to write a cover letter to accompany this contract to hold us, immune to them accusing us of not doing things in a signed contract. So that's been drafted, Mary's reviewed it, and she's fine with
And with language that says neither Baker nor I were here in 2014 going forward, but we're just trying to make sure everything, all the ducks are in a row, and that the contracts are written in such a way that it does document what we were supposed to do, what we did, and what we were, actually, we didn't get money for that because we got it through the split rate. But it's just cleanup language for the last 14 years that there was not a contract between the agencies. So.
Yeah, when we get around to actually signing that, we are going to ask Mr. Director Baker to come over and meet with the commission and discuss that contract, because there is obviously, anytime you're signing a document that's legal and binding and it goes back 5 years, I think y'all probably want to hear from him in regards to that. The go forward one is 2021 through 2025. We're obviously in 2021 right now. We have been reviewing this document. It's 30 some odd pages long. And we have a bunch of comments and questions to HHS. They really didn't want to entertain questions on the old contract because it really wouldn't have meant anything. So we've put all of our energies into the wording in this one. So we're working with them on an ongoing basis to work through the contract language issues as we see them. I will state that under this administrative contract, once it's exercised, we will literally get paid for our administrative services. So one thing with this admin contract is it's only covering the 3 waivers. We have other Medicaid services that we administer. That's one of our questions, is this is just waivers. So under HASKI, IDRD, and CS waiver, our admin is paid at 50% match, and we're projecting to get $8.5 million this year for the administrative costs related to these 3 waiver programs. That's upon execution. We'll bill it monthly, and there's a whole cost settlement process. So the good thing in this contract is the $8.5 million is an estimate, and there's actually a 2-way settlement process which can be a bad thing. If we don't spend it, we got to send it back. But also, if we've underestimated, since it's new, we're still kind of looking at our admin costs and making sure we have it properly accounted for. There's a check at the end for us as well in that cost report process. Now, they're not going to just give us $8.5 million for free and add to our budget. So what we've got to do is get out of the split rate environment we're in. So we've got a host of rates that aren't direct pass-through. Some rates are upside down. In other words, we bill Medicaid less than we pay the providers. So there are a real set of problems here as we get this contract in place. We have to go back to July and true up all of our rates to pass-through rates, which is a massive exercise in math. And a real problem. So I'll just give you a few examples. Under HASKI, it's $5.11 for a 15-minute job coach service. IDRD, $16.48 for 50. Head spinal cord injured, supported employment. This is where we help folks get employment and support them on the job, like Publix or Burger King they get $5.11 under IDRD, $16.48 and CS $21.95. They're the same service to just different populations. This is the kind of garbage we've inherited we're trying to fix. Residential habilitation, keep in mind it's not in the CS waiver. Haskey, $230.50, IDRD $196.99. So day program $19.64 for Haskey versus $31.29 for IDRD. We got to fix all this. So the issue we're having is we obviously can't go to these lower rates probably. So we're going to have to come to the table with some state dollars probably to patch these holes until we can get the rates fixed. But it's a hot mess. I mean, we've got a lot of this going on. We've got some, we bill $196.99 for residential, but we pay out $253.04 a day for Band H. We got a $196.99. We're taking $40-something, $50 off the table per day for providers. So there's a lot to figure out. But we just wanted to give you an update on this because it is something we're working on. And it's important because I know if you've been following the commission for a long, long time, this admin contract's been a real sticking point and a point of contention by a lot of folks. So that was my update, and I'll be glad to take questions.
How much is dealing with this mess pulling you away from dealing with B&I stuff that we want to have happen?
It's been a struggle. Yeah. Right now, I'm at the shelve this. I mean, the issue we're at now is we're working with Susan and Pat and other team members to get our comments over to HHS and put it on their court.
Okay.
We can refocus a while until they kick it back over the net to us. But yeah, it's been part of the reason that things aren't getting done.
Yeah.
But the administrative contract is key to going to fee for service because the administrative contract, we no longer can get money and then the fee for service can get paid their fee for service and everybody's happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody needs to understand that's a key to going to fee for service. So once this happens, it is much easier and better to go to fee for service once we get an administrative contract.
What Medicaid pays, they will get.
That's right.
Nobody's reaching in and grabbing anything out of it.
That's right, and that's what it should be.
Which has been a long time complaint. How much and dispute about how much?
Right.
Probably 10 years.
The split
8 or
fees
10
are
years.
in residential too, other than the fact that we're underwater in those split fees. So we are paying out more than we're getting back.
Any other questions regarding the administrative contract? Okay. Hearing none, let's go on to the next item, the Appendix K.
We don't need to approve anything having to do with it?
No.
Information. We got a lot to do still. We're not even close to proposing anything.
Okay. I thought we had to propose the next step, but go ahead.
All right, Appendix K. You guys may be aware of that. That's where, Appendix K has existed before COVID came to existence, but is this our second or third K? We've done a couple of them with HHS. It's really their document. And they came out with retainer payments finally. They were against that initially. So really what this is helping is all of our private providers. It meets.
Just a second.
Okay. Private providers that Barry brought up earlier that they aren't getting paid at all in this situation because they're closed and there's no revenue for them. This gives them a mechanism to get up to 40% of their pre-COVID revenues back for a short period of time. I think it's only for like a quarter or something that they can get their money back. But anyways, it is revenue for them. They're all doing that direct with HHS. And as it relates to our DSN board, we are the biller of record. And so we are the ones that have been without the day program revenue because we've been paying bands. And so we have billed $1.7 million is what we were able to bill for retainer payments for our day program, where we lost revenue because we had zero revenue. We are awaiting their review and approval of that, but that's what we submitted. So we'll keep you posted on that. When and if we get those funds, we will be looking at a way to, try to help the providers with some of that, because it's really, either consider it when we talk about recoupments or some mechanism, instead of just putting it in their pockets. Now, you all may not agree with that, but that will be coming to you at some point in a later meeting.
We will have some private providers of day programs that don't direct bill HHS, that bill through us, that they will show true losses. They don't get paid the band payment. So we will have to work with them. Right, Chris?
Yep. Again, that was just information to keep you guys posted.
Any questions with regard to where we're going with the appendix K?
But if we do get that $1.8 million, we could use that for capital improvements, for the record.
We could. There's a variety of things you all could choose to do with it.
That's right.
We pay those private providers.
One last, all right, we didn't really get into it a whole lot, and I don't want to get back into B under new business. We focused to some degree on capital budget. I want to make sure that the spending plan is up online so everybody can see exactly what we have. Is that up?
That will be posted after y'all approved it. It goes out as part of the minutes when they're posted after this meeting.
Okay.
It's not up now, but it will be.
It's not now, but it will be by a day, 2 days? Does anybody, well, Mark would know. Mark.
It's after
it can be done today or early morning. I'm not the person who does it, but I believe.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
Fairly quickly.
It's attached to the minutes.
Yeah,
okay.
And it's how long it takes.
Okay.
So the answer is fairly quickly.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, my grandmother used to say, when I'd say, when do we, she'd always say, right now, just a minute.
Yeah.
So that's,
exactly. That's the time frame, right?
Close, but yeah, it's a little bit off. I was always concerned.
Anything else with regard to K? Okay. Thank you for those updates, Chris.
You're welcome.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the state director's review, which is due for us. We got an extension to what day, Mary? When did we get
So after this commission meeting.
Right, yeah. So that is due. So I think the thing that we need to discuss right now is choosing a mechanism for how that's going to be done, how that review will be completed and then submitted. I know that the requirements are that, as chair, that I tabulate up the scale, the 1 to 5 scale, and then we have the other document that we have to complete as well that has the ratings of fails, meets, succeeds. So I'd entertain a motion at this time with regard to how we're going to get that out. What was the line you just said? In a minute or?
Right now, just a minute.
Right now, just a minute. Where it needs to be done right now in just a minute?
Yeah.
Of how we're going to be doing
I
that.
think that can always, it's fine.
Yeah,
In a couple of weeks, it'll be.
Well, I don't want it to be, I mean, my hope is that we have it, I want to get it done
Mr.
ASAP.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Sure, but for clarification's sake for the public, I'm not sure if it was clear, I maybe missed it while I was reading
Right.
something. But what we're talking about is a mandatory evaluation that must go to state, the state joint, what is the name of it?
Agency
fiscal.
and salary commission.
Yeah,
Okay.
the agency head salary commission requires us to fill out these 2 forms and submit it to them so they can review for salary purposes.
And all of us have copies of what those standards would be and whether or not the executive director has met the preceding expectation levels. And we are required as a commission to give our recommendations or our personal evaluations to meet, exceed, or fail to meet those 6, how many was it, 6 standards that were given to us?
Correct.
So for public purposes, so it won't sound like smoke and mirrors or something that's going on, that's what this is about. And so each of us has one of those. And so we are prepared, I think, at some point in time to check those off individually, hand them to you. You're going to tabulate them. And that's what will go to the commission, correct?
Well, that was what we're supposed to be talking about.
We have to make a motion.
That's where I think Commissioner Rollinson was getting ready to make a motion.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that, on the matter of the agency head survey for board commission members, and also on the agency head performance evaluation, that each individual member of this commission complete those forms, hand them to you before the end of this day, and that you tally those and forward our changes to any of those forms to the correct agency for the director's evaluation.
Second.
You have a second. Any questions with regard to that procedure? Any input from staff with regard to that procedure? Is everybody good? I just did the question, and again, you can either hand it to me or email it to me, so either one of those is fine. I'm good with that. Any?
Mr. Chairman, I think that this is the appropriate way to handle this. I feel very strongly that, our director is doing a good job for us, and we need to respect her as an individual and as an employee of our commission. And this is our way of doing that in a respectful manner.
I agree 100%.
Second.
All right, all in favor of that procedure, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for that, and I will be happy to tabulate that and put that all together
Chairman,
for us. And I will, when that's complete, I will forward a copy back in.
But, and I may have missed it studying or while I was gone just for a moment, but I think at this point in time, before she proceeds with her report, because we're at her at this point in time, I want to personally thank Mark Cameron for the great job he does in doing all this audio. And he's, kind of kept me in between the meetings or committee meetings on the policy committee and all that. He is so easy to work with and so helpful to me, who's not really very adept at computer stuff, to walk me through this. He's been so very helpful and competent and super guy. And I understand, Executive Director, that you have a new employee that you want to introduce.
Part of my report.
Is that part of the thing? I want to make sure we didn't go anywhere.
No, we're not.
Okay.
No, we're not going anywhere.
Okay.
How about reiterate?
I got a 2 o'clock, so we're gonna get moving here.
Yeah.
I want to introduce Christy Lingard as our new, I'm sorry, go ahead. You gotta say that it's the director's report.
No, please, after you.
Okay.
All right.
Christy Lingard is our new executive admin assistant. She started on Monday, this Monday, and who I hope is not second guessing her decision about coming here. With 4 commission meetings in a week, I think that's a record for us. And nothing like trial by fire, but she has been a pleasure to work with and has taken up so quickly on this and has done a fine job this week. And thank you also to Colleen Honey, who has stepped in and assisted. She's one of our admins upstairs, and she has done a great job in helping Christy acclimate to our process when it comes to the commission, and we wouldn't have been able to do any of this without her. So, okay. So I can keep going?
Yes,
all right.
please.
I also want to take a moment to say that the governor has proclaimed October 11th through the 17th as Case Manager Appreciation Week. And the State Fiscal Accountability Authority, or SFA, as they tell me, SFAA. We want to give you an update on the virtual meeting that was held on 10/13 of this past Tuesday. Just as a reminder for folks who don't know, the 2 topics regarding DDSN were transfer of property from Clinton, from Woodland Center to the city of Clinton, and then conveying those current DDSN properties we've spoken about so many times that providers are operating, conveying those to those providers. We shared all the information with the Department of Admin on September 10th as required to get on the agenda. Constance Holloway, our attorney, offered each member an opportunity to meet with us in advance. However, only Curtis Loftus took us up on that offer. We met with him, and actually we didn't, it was Rufus and Chris met with him and satisfied his questions. Hugh Leatherman's office called and asked a few questions of the Department of Admin. They were relayed to us and we sent the answers to them. For the actual meeting, all of our team was in attendance, virtually of course. in room 180. It was, I think we met the limit of the room. The meeting had significant technical issues, I just want you to know. Throughout the meeting, especially Senator Leatherman's audio, he just had a really hard time the whole meeting. I think that most of the sound became garbled on over to him.
It was garbled when you were listening to it. I mean, if you were, yeah, you could hear the echo effect and everything. At first I thought, well, I'm going to tell you what I thought about maybe Hugh wasn't hearing quite right, but it wasn't him at all.
Okay.
You could hear.
So it wasn't just his computer, it was everything. But also at the end of the meeting, our Zoom froze. I mean, it was clear as a bell for us. We had no problems with him. We were on the WebEx meeting on the computer so that we could answer questions. And then they had was it a Zoom that was up for the larger audience, and it kind of froze, especially towards the end of the meeting.
Is that why they tabled it, Mary?
Huh? No, I don't think they tabled it for that reason.
Okay, I just wondered if we couldn't get,
Right. Well, if you listen to the beginning of it, just after the meeting started, Richard Ekstrom requested that items 9 and 10, both of our DDSN issues, be carried over. He was, and then he was kind of said, well, they're on the agenda, so bring that up when it comes time for that agenda item. And they went right back into the agenda. And the meeting went on. The Witten Center matter was carried over, as Richard Ekstrom and Merle Smith indicated they have some questions. But again, they didn't ask questions from the materials we sent over on September 11th. That's fine. We're already setting up meetings with them.
I have one question about that. They did say something in there about us doing our own assessment of this, of the sale to Witten. It said that they had Clinton's assessment, but it said that we had not, as an agency, done an assessment.
I believe that, Chris,
I thought we did.
answer. I believe we did. So I think that,
Yeah,
well, go ahead.
we did our own appraisal in 2019. Those particular members who questioned just didn't have a copy of that appraisal, but they've been provided that as of yesterday.
Can we upload that to the stuff on their website? They had a list of everything that we had submitted, and it was not, our appraisal was not in those documents. So we need to make sure when we submit it, that next time it shows up in the documents that they put online, just so you know.
Well, we don't control what they publish for their agenda.
But I think what they published was what you sent them.
They have
No,
it.
they had all that material, they just didn't publish it.
Okay.
Members didn't have it.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
And we did assess it. I mean, we're not gonna just sign over 800 acres.
Right.
We're not like, oh, yeah, sure, take it.
Right.
So, I mean, it's wastewater treatment. And we're talking about owning electrical grids. We also have water system that we own over there. They're gonna take all that over. That thing is atrophied. It's, Rufus looks like he's just itching to speak. So
No.
come on up, Rufus.
I actually have to go to the restroom, but, but I will speak to it though, in terms of replacement costs for the assets that are part of the land, the acreage that we were gonna convey over to the city of Clinton. I think, the replacement cost was well over $7 million.
Yeah.
And the ongoing maintenance fees and, I mean, we just can't support that. We can't manage it, and we will never use, that part of the campus.
It's on the other side of the highway.
Yeah, I know where I went PC.
Right, 26.
I just want us to make sure that they have all the documents they're asking for. Because
We'll make sure.
they made it look like we had not done, on that call, it made it like we had not done what we were supposed to do.
Yes, ma'am. And we were kind of fuming.
Yeah,
I was fuming.
We've got an appointment to actually visit with Ekstrom.
Okay, good.
So he'll have all that.
Good.
We're still trying to reach Merle Smith's office.
Okay.
We think Leatherman's okay. We know Curtis Loftus is.
Okay.
So we're making sure we hit each one of them.
How about the governor's office? Has anyone talked with the governor's office about this as well? Because he is chairman of that committee.
I reached out to each individual chief of staff member, via
Heard
email.
that from Trey?
And the only individual that responded was Curtis Loftus' post. Eddie Gunn then subsequently responded the day before the virtual hearing. So we have meetings set up with Ekstrom next week We're working with Colonel Smith, and I'm gonna, reach out to the governor's office to see if he has any questions.
Let's just make sure they all have.
And you know, the Witness Center thing has been in the pipeline since 2016.
That's what I thought. I just, you know, it came
I
up.
really looked to have more I think the problem is it's 700 acres.
It is huge.
You know, it's a big piece of land.
It is, it's a huge project, you know, and in Clinton, you know, the price of the property is not gonna change that much from, you know, obviously from, if we have an appraisal, from 2019.
I think that we had it for sale, if not mistaken, one time, and the bid, it was so low that we didn't sell it, so.
Well, and
I
I
mean,
think
that
that's
is.
very fair. I mean, you know, I just want to make sure that they know that we did do everything we were supposed to do, that those individuals on the committee just did not have their information.
Quick question, does this issue in front of the Accountability Authority include all the housing that?
No, well, that was the second item.
Yeah, right.
That was 9, and then 10.
Witten was first, and then.
And then
all
the
the
houses. And we didn't.
They didn't even agree to take that up.
They didn't,
right.
they didn't, they just brought they had the motion, and they didn't second the motion.
It sounds like on the surface, I remember when I first heard it, you know, that what was wanted, what we wanted to do, it sounded a little, what, we're gonna do what? It just hits you as, we're gonna transfer, this sounds strange. Until you get into the maintenance that is being required of us to maintain all that property, it makes sense to do it, and because we don't want the load and the responsibility. It's kind of like the road system.
And
You know,
also
if you have a road system that incorporates more roads than anybody else per capita in the nation than we do in South Carolina, guess whose responsibility that is? It falls to the state, and that's why there's such a huge maintenance issue with DOT. So over a period of decades, Chairman, it was like, well, what, you got a problem with us maintaining that road, county? We'll be glad to give the road back to you.
That's right. Mary, in this, do we now have, I think you said yesterday you had just hired a legislative liaison to help us with that. Is that next? Good.
Still your state report.
I know, they always do. I mean, I just knock off
Right, as long
items.
as we get to the information.
Sorry, Mary, we're messing
But
up
I
your.
think, but I honestly think, I think you're right, Commissioner Thomas. I think this is an issue that if you're not paying attention to everything that's said, it's like, oh, why are you doing that? I think at first glance that people just sort of take information, and then when it actually ends up on an agenda to where they actually have to make a decision, it's like, whoa, I gotta go through those materials again. So we're just gonna do that.
Okay. That's
You know, the Witness Center project, it is, you know, we were waiting for the question, can we carry this over without any problem? We never got the question.
I thought they would have asked y'all, could anybody speak up?
And we don't,
That's
we were on, we
shocked
went
me.
live, we told everybody in the room to shut up, because we had to go from mute to unmute, and basically waiting for that question, because we were gonna say, no problem, go on, you know? And, it never came, and we are trying to figure out, is that when Zoom froze, or they just didn't have any questions? So, don't know.
Disappeared.
But it's fine. I would rather have them feel comfortable with the decision.
Yes.
And take no action than to take action and say no, just based on the fact that I didn't know everything, so I'm gonna say no. I think that's a poor decision. So I wanna make sure they have all the information, so we'll do that.
Let us know, I mean, if you need for us to, as commissioners, talk with those individuals and explain this to them and why it's important for us to go ahead and get this taken care of because of the maintenance cost.
Right, and we've got Merle Smith's office, we're still trying to get them to get an appointment, and on the 29th, we're meeting with Richard Extra.
Good.
Okay, and again, if anybody, because like the Witness Center project it's been around for a long time. You kind of probably up to speed on all the properties transfers, because we've been talking about that for a while. In fact, changed a policy to take some of those maintenance costs off of the agency and onto the folks that are actually using the property.
That's right.
But I think that the Witness Center one is old, so if you want more information, just let us know and we'll get that to you.
You let us know if we can help you.
We will.
To get that
Well,
moving.
we've got an appointment on the 29th if anybody wants to go.
Okay.
Okay, so, and we also have a budget office hearing. The governor's budget office has our scheduled hearing for October 28th. This whole budget process is so out of whack to what it's normally the pattern. So I just want you to know we have that meeting. Again, if somebody wants to attend it, we're doing it virtually. So it might be better if you come here and because we have one invitation to that meeting and we kind of sit together and present.
And the other element to that is not just if we want it, Mary, it's if it is at all helpful for you to have us sitting behind.
I think that's perfectly fine.
You tell us, it's not just, do we want to be there? It is, in my opinion. Do you want us there sitting behind you to be able to say, we're in support of what our staff is saying, right?
We have always
you need to
done the
say that
budget
too.
office presentation ourselves and the Senate and the House. We have had commission members.
Yeah,
show up at
I
the meetings.
just to say I'm sitting here in support of this.
Yeah, I know.
Comes up.
We'd
I've
be
done
more
that.
than happy to do
Now,
that.
I do want to say this, though. The first year I was here, the governor's budget, when we had that hearing, we pretty much had nothing show up in our, and about basically anything we asked for, we did not get. But last year's budget was very, very favorable to DDSN. It was actually, we were so pleasantly surprised. Of course, COVID kind of stopped everything, but it shows that the relationship is starting to build. Chris can get you the time. I don't have the time right now.
That'd be good.
But yeah, we'll make sure that we use a room that's appropriate for the size of the folks that are coming. Sure. You know,
Add me to that list too.
Okay.
9 a.m.
I
And
gotta
it's
make sure
virtual,
that's-
so if you want to attend from your
Can we do it
location
that
in
way?
Florence, you can do that.
Chris,
Probably.
can we forward that invitation?
Mhm.
Okay, as long as we can forward the invitation.
We'll be there for you.
Okay, and the 2017 cost report, this is Mr. Clark over there, is supposed to be completed and ready for our final review tomorrow okay. I gotta give kudos to Chris. That 2017 cost report came in with some issues that were troubling, as far as would have resulted in a payback of monies. And it had to do with the head and spinal cord waiver, finding that we didn't actually have cost reports from all our providers. If Chris didn't notice it, what was that?
About $2 million.
About $2 million payment. I want to tell you, in previous years, that would have just went. It's that. Absolutely. It's that Chris thing with the forehead, that he looks at every single number. And we just noticed that there were large providers that were not providing ASCII cost reports, and it wasn't being noticed. So now that is not in there anymore. The cost reports have been put in there, which means the cost was put in there, which means the payback is not there. So I thank him every day for all the stuff he's doing. 2013, 2015 are underway. And Chris is beginning to develop that capability within our team to continue carrying these cost reports forward. And, you know, not just building the team, molding the cost reports that we're getting from the community too, through training with the financial providers, through training with the actual auditors as to what we expect to see on those cost reports. Because those cost reports, we need to inform what we present and report. So they have to be done correctly. We are having a dip in our staffing at the regional centers. Of course, it's COVID related. We are just stepping up our efforts to hire. I think as people start coming out from behind the bunkers and out of the holes, and they'll be looking for jobs. And because some of the jobs that the people had are no longer there. Restaurants are closing, retail is closing. So we'll be seeing some more individuals from that area, that sector. Given DDSN will not get a budget enhancement this year, we're predicting that we may run short of funded HASCII slots. Okay, we've got people in enrollment right now, so we're watching that. Who's actually taking a slot, who's not. But I'm just giving you early notice that HASCII numbers are kept separate from the IDRD and the CS. So we will have a decision point if it looks like we are going to run short of funded HASCII slots to either say, okay, we're going to have to decide, are we going to run a waiting list in HASCII, which we haven't done for a few years, or are we going to try to figure out how to fund those slots? And we would, again, bring you choices about how different ways this could be done. I just wanted to give you a heads up that sometime during this year, there's a real good chance. Because we remember in our budget, we asked for additional HASCII slots. So
Mary, how many, paid people do we currently have on Haskell in South Carolina? Do we know?
I don't know that.
Enrollment,
Do you know?
enrolled waiver slots is 1,036.
And do we don't have any, how many vacant, have we got any vacant right now?
We have 19 available slots and 59 people pending. So that means,
59 pending?
yeah, that means some of those people won't come to fruition with an enrollment. That's why there's more.
That's the maximum number you can have is 59 out of there, but it could be less. And so it also depends on how many people, of course, this time from now till the end of the year require a Haskell slot.
Okay.
Maybe with so many people on the road, you might not have as many people needing a Haskell slot. I don't know.
Okay.
Central office staff is still operating on phase 2 of the staffing pattern set forth by the Department of Admin. So our remote staffing goal was 50%, and we have met that. We have no COVID cases among staff, and many days we are as high as 70%. The statewide average is about 50% in the office and 50% working remotely. And I am pleased to announce that our new legislative liaison / public information officer is going to start on Monday, the 26th. Her name is Kimberly Corley McLeod, and she comes from the Emergency Management Division. I think she's been kind of busy over there over these last few months with Kimberly Corley, Corley, McLeod, McLeod. Okay, and that is my report. Thank you.
Any questions? All right. Next item on the agenda then would be to enter into executive session. So it would be the intent to have a motion to enter into executive session to discuss a legal matter. Upon that motion being granted, we will take a short break while we clear the room and restroom break, and then we'll reconvene in executive session. Would entertain a motion to that effect.
So,
Second.
Miller and Rollinson on that one. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. So for that executive session, I think we need Mary and Candace, who's the lead clerk. Constance.
That's my bad.
Constance, sorry. I apologize. Okay, this is Gary Lamel. We are rising from executive session at this time. Let the minutes reflect that no actions were taken, no votes were held, no motions were made while in executive session, and the topics addressed in executive session were limited to those as announced to discuss legal matters. The next item on the agenda is to set the next regular meeting, which will be November 19th, 2020. Any additional matters to come for us with regard to that?
Except to say when's Thanksgiving?
26th,
And what date is that?
Thursday.
I mean, I know the 26th, and what day are we meeting next?
The week before,
Night.
the Thursday week before.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions? Would then entertain, anything else from me?
No, I'm good.
Okay, would then entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. And